Can I have your attention, please? And welcome to the May 5th, 2008 Lowell Planning Board meeting. Tonight we have 3 public hearings on. We do have some new business for an updated project on the Hamilton Canal District. We also have some old business listed on for 868 Middlesex Street. And we also have a matter for a lot release on Residents First Development Corporation on 1436 Gorham Street. If the board has no objection, I'd like to start off with the old business for the lot release on 1436 Gorham Street. The board will discuss the lot release proposed for the 10 lots located at the Residents First Development Corporation project. The address of the lots are 70-76, 82, 83, and 87 Murray Lane. Can we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Yep.
Inform you that I will not be voting on this issue. I do serve on the River's Edge loan pool, so I therefore will not be voting.
So for the record, planning board member Mr. Fischette will not be taking part in this discussion or this vote, that we have a conflict issue, a potential conflict issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Dennis Connors, and tonight I'm representing the Residents First Development Corporation. I'm actually here on 2 matters tonight. I'll be as quick as possible, so you have a large agenda. The first issue is, as the chairman said, we're requesting a release of 10 lots from the subdivision. They're lots 70 to 76, plus lots 82, 83, and 87. Those lots are located along Murray Lane. We would request their release under the same conditions as we've done previously. That is, after the approval of the city engineer for the lots and issuances of building occupancy permits by the building department. We would expect, if we get your consent, we would expect to actually pass on these houses by the end of May.
I think on the previous ones, we basically didn't have you put a bond up because of the circumstances, how you're working with the Lowell Housing Authority, correct?
That's right. It's, the Residents First is a nonprofit, and there was no bond put up on the project.
Okay. Any of the board members have any questions in regards to the lot releases? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Lockhart, if you would,
Do we
please.
have documentation? I didn't understand any documentation on this at all.
Maybe Aaron can help us on that.
Yeah, Eric. if you-
No, there was nothing from the engineer's department on this matter about work completed, so.
If I can answer that, the work is ongoing, and what we're looking for is approval from the board contingent upon approval of the final work by the engineering department. They are out there almost on a daily basis inspecting various aspects of the work, so that anything you granted tonight, wouldn't be effective unless the engineering department and the building department certifies to the planning department where we go through a paperwork release of the lots.
That's basically consistent with what we did with the previous lots, correct,
That's
sir?
exactly what we did. If we don't do it a little bit ahead of the actual completion of construction, it's a tremendous carrying cost with the houses completed.
Okay. 'Cause I remember back when it started first coming in, I know we had a big discussion about whether we put the bond up, how we didn't we waived the bond at that time due to the fact the Lowell Housing Authority was involved, it was nonprofit, and we discussed that at the previous meetings, and then you've been coming in slowly, time by time, releasing certain lots, correct? Conditional approval.
That's a conditional approval is exactly the way to put it.
Thank you, sir. Anything else, Mr. Lockhart? No. Okay. Any other board members have any questions on those lot releases? No. Hearing none, what's the request of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we release the lots to Residents First Development Corporation at 1436 Gorham Street.
With the conditional approval that it's okay with the city engineer?
Yes.
All right.
And
Motion is-
upon issuance of the occupancy permits.
And upon the issuance of occupancy permits? Is that
Yes.
acceptable to you, Mr. Gentleman? Okay. Motion's been made. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Chair votes yes, so we have 4 in favor and 1 abstention. And you had also another plan to address to us tonight, Mr. Connors?
Thank you very much for that. If I could have five more minutes of your time. What I'd like to do tonight is present a concept of a revision to the approved subdivision plan. We're doing it before we make a formal presentation, because we want the input of the planning board. We've discussed the plan with the Department of Planning and Development, and they are generally in support of the concept. It's all happened relatively quickly, so I have copies of the plans. If I could approach the board and give each man a copy.
Thank you, sir. Aaron, you ever had a chance to look these over so far?
A little bit,
Discuss
but
them?
if there's an extra copy, I'll take one.
Okay. Here we go. I'll give you that one, bring that one down there. We'll try to share one over here.
Probably the best way to proceed is for me to give you a brief narrative of what we are planning, and we can reference it with the plans.
Okay.
The biggest thing is Zone 6, which is this red. Is it easier for me to stand up there and...
Yeah, if you would, please. And if you want to just turn on one of the microphones there, so it'll carry. So if you can turn on one of those mics, just hit us with a green dot showing, then we can take it from there. Is that one working too? Either that or you can hit the green dot by this mic. Just say, you want to put the green dot there, you can hit that one. Do your voice pick up on that? Yeah.
Is this working?
Okay. All right. That'll do it.
I think I can be loud enough anyways. The change to the plan was driven by economics and common sense. And Zone 6, for the people that were here, and the original plan was presented, was the development of 6 lots, which involved a rather severe wetland crossing. The cost to develop that portion of the site was always astronomical. As we got further and further down the development process, all the partners to the RTC realized something had to be done. The development cost for each lot in Zone 6 would have been $225,000 per lot. Make it pretty hard for a nonprofit to generate any houses out there. Working with our engineers, we've come up with a plan to delete Zone 6 out of any kind of construction or development for unit construction. We've reconfigured some lots in the remainder of the sites in Zones 4 and 6, which are marked in a number of places, by moving lot lines. We've created the same number of units by substituting some singles for some duplexes and using some previously unused space. It results in exactly the same number of units, but the single-family lots are reduced from 90 single-family lots to 74 single-family lots, and the duplex lots have increased from 45 duplex lots to 53 duplex lots. All the new lots that were created meet the zoning that was in effect as of the time of the subdivision approval. The total number of units remain at 180, so there's no change there. It doesn't involve any reconfiguration of any roadways. I'm giving you the positive side. There's very few negatives to this plan, actually. The wetland impact is significantly reduced also. This plan would also, when it's presented in its final form, would require conservation approval, and we've had talks with that staff at DPD, and they are receptive to it. Some of the other issues that would have to be addressed, the RFDC had promised a Veterans Memorial at a portion of the site for the members that were here at the time. We would still do that. We used a portion of that site for the creation of one duplex lot. Well, we would propose to move the Veterans Memorial to that center island as one of the alternatives, but we are willing to listen. A park was proposed for this area, a small playground type park. We deleted that. It added a duplex and a single family lot. These two areas remain open for some kind of recreation area, and I think the real beauty of the plan is that this entire, what was Zone 6, could become a passive recreation area, and would still meet all the requirements on the zone. Personally, I think walking trail with a minimal crossing. Makes a better recreation area than a small playground type of thing stuck in the middle of the project, which is going to affect that little neighborhood more than it would the rest of the development. But the reason for the presentation tonight is to hear any concerns, address any issues you have before we come back, hopefully at the next meeting with our engineers and present our final plan.
Thank you, sir. So, in regards to the veteran site, you're gonna move that there, but hopefully keep it on site somewhere else? Maybe where the open area is, or somewhere else?
The veterans?
Yeah.
No,
The-
no, this is
That's
where
what they-
we would propose to move it to a
Okay.
visible, it was down here,
I got it. All right, so you're moving it from there over, okay?
yeah, we'd like to move it there, we think that's visible,
All right,
and it's gonna be maintained anyways.
okay. Okay, thank you.
How close
Mr.
do you-
Lockhart, go ahead.
How close do you come on that right-hand side, Dennis, to the wetlands?
Here?
No, up on the right,
Here?
to the right.
Oh,
You got new units in there,
yeah.
pretty close there.
Yeah, they're in the buffer zone, and we have to file a notice of intent,
Yeah.
but those lots are part of the original plan. They are not going any further. That was 7 existing lots with single-family homes, and we reconfigured them with some duplexes.
That's
So-
where they want to put the little trail going down with the little canoe site and all that before, right?
Oh, that wasn't,
That was a long time ago, yeah, yeah.
I don't take an ownership of that.
Yeah, that came in the first time, then it had to get squeezed out.
Yeah.
I recall.
Yeah. I mean, that might have been,
Yeah, that was
that
the
might have
first time
been,
through.
that might have been a good plan, but I don't know if it was
No, it didn't work, actually,
financially
unfortunately.
feasible.
The
as they
thought was
say.
there, but it didn't work in the planning, yeah.
I think this area will make a tremendous recreation area.
Now, what's your square footage on that green area now, approximately? I mean, it
Yeah, I just gotta get my,
looks pretty big.
yeah, I think it's,
Okay, I think I
it's
picked it on. Is it?
1.87 acres.
Okay,
Yeah. There's a calculation
okay, I see it now.
on the map talking about the, meeting the requirements of the recreational space.
Okay, good, yeah, thank you. Any of the board members have any questions?
And all of your parking is contained within all the individual units, so converting the singles to the duplex won't affect it
No,
at
the
all.
parking is still, the parking requirement still holds, and we've met the parking and the zoning requirements on each lot. And the road stay exactly the same. And that's where the savings comes in.
Mr. Chairman, just one question. Mr. Connors, first of all, as I said before, I think this is a great project, Could have got a lot of condos on this site, but what we're building here is a nice residential neighborhood, so that's a positive. You mentioned that the new units meet all the zoning that existed at the time the plan was put forth. That kind of implies that they don't meet the current zoning, is that true, or?
No, the only reason I said that, I wasn't trying to mislead. I said the requirement for the change of subdivision plan is that you have to meet the zoning that was in effect as of the date the plan, that subdivision was originally approved.
Right.
It may or may not, I haven't even checked that because
Okay.
it wasn't germane.
Okay. And all you're looking for tonight is general feedback. We're not voting on anything tonight. We'll have an opportunity to review the plans and have the DPD look at it.
No, we're going to make an official presentation. This is more of a preliminary. It came up in the last month. We want to go as quickly as possible with it. I wanted to see if you had any concerns before I had my engineers go further, bring in an expensive plan that we're going to have to revise. The total savings, I don't know if I got to that number, but the total savings in development costs is $2.6 million on this. Now, we'll have some offsetting costs, but I imagine the net savings will be in the $2 million range.
Right. Yeah, I do agree with you. I think this larger recreation area actually is more beneficial than having a corner of the street dedicated to recreation. We'll be able to do a lot more in that spot, I would imagine. So, personally, I don't see any problem with the plan as long as the city is okay with, the wetlands issues and any zoning issues.
Yeah, I mean, the conservation representative was actually supportive of the plan, because there was some, I wasn't involved in the original plan, but there was some apprehension about the major wetland crossing like that.
Any other further questions from the board? Okay. Thank you, sir. We look forward to seeing you in the future. Good luck.
Thank you very much for the
You're welcome.
time. Appreciate it.
Getting back to our public hearings. First public hearing is 1782 Middlesex Street. The Lowell Planning Board will hold a public hearing to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Basil and Joanne Carr Anastasius for a site plan review for a proposed project located at the above address. The project proposes to raise 2 existing buildings currently on site. One building operating as a beauty salon, the other is a single-family home. Redevelopment of the site includes a 7,500 square foot commercial building and 19-space parking lot. The commercial building will hold 5 storefronts each, approximately 1,200 square feet in size. The project is located in the Regional Retail Zoning District and requires site plan review under Section 11.4 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. This matter's been before us a couple of times and has been continued. The reason for continuing for tonight's hearing was for a new set of plans. And saying that, we may hear the case for the applicant, please.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I'm Attorney James Hall. I represent the petitioner. And to bring you back to 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were before this board, and the board graciously extended to my client an additional 3 weeks to hopefully resolve this matter. We indicated that we had some exciting new developments. There was a potential for some new developments that would make this proposal a better proposal. In fact, since then and now, we were able to secure a property at 1719 Columbia Street, which abuts this parcel, 2/3 of which is in the business district and 1/3 is in the residential. We have control of the commercial portion, the 5,000 square foot northerly part of that project, that parcel, that we are able to put a parking lot on the parcel in perpetuity. We have an easement to do so. In fact, the lot is owned by my client's daughter. So we feel we have control of it. We have a signed easement to put a parking lot as shown on this plan before you. The easement refers specifically to this plan. I have Mr. Close with me. There were some questions raised, I think, in the review by the professional staff that hopefully he could address. Is Mr. Close is here? Okay. Ronnie? Thank you.
Gentlemen of the board, my name is Ron Close, for the record, the engineer on the job. There was a number of changes made to the plans with the addition of the Columbia Street lot. The major part was the expansion of the parking from, I believe we had 19 before, we're now at 20 before, we're now at 26 parking spaces. There were some revisions made to the Middlesex Street lot. They are primarily the parking spaces themselves were adjusted. The addition of handicap parking to more align with the center of the building. There was an expansion on the driveway area from a 21-foot access to 24 feet. Some additional planting areas, which we believe meets the requirement of the 5% of total parking area. That's illustrated at the top of the plan, where it indicates total parking, total planting area required, and what we did provide. There was a number of items that the DPD generated a letter after reviewing the plan. I'll address each one of them by number to make it so we can follow this mathematically. Okay, number one is the latest plan with a revision date as indicated, 4/23/08. Indicated that we moved a landscape area that has been replaced back into the same area. That was on the most westerly line of the Middlesex Street lot, which abuts Wood Street. There was also another landscape area put approximately in, online with that same spot, but adjacent to the building. So there was another space added for primarily landscaping. We lost a parking space in that area, but we feel that the 8 additional spaces over on the Columbia Street lot would address that issue. The next item, too, was the drive lane, which was a 21-foot width. That has been changed to 24. That island adjusted, and also the parking in the area was adjusted to accommodate that drive lane. And also the 24-foot drive lane on the Columbia Street lot. We had initially a 22-foot drive lane. The parking was adjusted to accommodate the 24-foot drive lane, and I believe that was a request from your traffic engineer. Number 3, again, addresses the Columbia Street lot from your traffic engineer. Number 4, it indicated that there was no landscaping addressed on the Columbia Street parking lot. At this time, there are some trees indicated on the plan, and if the DPD feels that they're adequate, then we hope that satisfies that item. There was also a screening, line of screening, coniferous trees, pine trees that were indicated along the most southerly part of the second Columbia Street lot. This abuts an existing stockade fence, so that we thought that we'd leave the stockade fence. It's probably the abutter's stockade anyway, so what we were going to do is put in a line of pine trees or coniferous trees, or whichever the board decides they'd want. Item 5 addresses approximately 3 trees, existing trees. They're anywhere from 5-foot diameter to 3-foot diameter trees. As indicated on the plan, it indicates where the existing trees are on the Columbia Street lot. We provided a means to save these trees and still put in the parking with the access to a Dempsey dumpster. Item 6 addresses the dumpster. It should be screened. It also addresses the, it indicates that you wanted a concrete platform. The plan indicates that we will build a concrete platform specifically for the dumpster, and we're going to try and match the existing vinyl stockade fence, white vinyl stockade fence that abuts the most northerly lot line of the Columbia Street lot. Item 7, again, spells out that it was unclear on what kind of fence we were going to put around the dumpster. As I mentioned, there's a note on there that says a white vinyl stockade fence to surround the dumpster area, which matches the, like I said, the abutting lots' white vinyl fence. Item 8 is the item with the indicating the handicap parking that you wanted to, or the DPD wanted to be moved more to a more center spot on the building. We provided 2 more handicap parking in that area. Item 9, I'm not really sure exactly what the board wanted here, or the DPD wanted. It addresses the trees along Wood Street, but it's indicating that the DPD would like the trees to start at approximately the location of the existing handicap ramp. But these were removed at an earlier time at the request, I believe, of the DPD traffic engineer because of the sight distance issues. So they can be easily put back in. We left them off because it was a issue before when we just asked the board to define what they want, and we could add that and show them, put them in field and show them on an as-built plan, if that's the wish of the board. There were a few items from the traffic engineer, and I believe he indicated that he would like some sort of a statement or an agreement that the lots on the Columbia Street, in the Columbia Street area, are used primarily for employee parking. That's something to be addressed by the owner, I believe. And the other two items were the dumpster alignment, which we have already addressed in this presentation, in the drive space, which is the access easement at 24 feet. With that, I'll address any questions for the board.
Mr. Close, just at this point in time, I'm going to ask Aaron, our associate planner. Aaron, could you expand on number 9 so everybody understands what your request is and what Mr. Close proposes to do?
Yeah, basically that comment was just trying to point out that the landscape buffer could be continued all the way up to the corner of Wood in Middlesex. Not that we're looking to have trees put into that area, just that the buffer continue all the way up to where the handicap ramp is. So right now, the sidewalk juts back to Wood Street just before the intersection, when it can easily carry all the way to the corner, maintain the buffer, and just not plant any trees where there's a sight distance issue.
Do you understand what he's requesting on that, Mr. Close?
Right. The only thing I have to say is we did an overlay on a sketch plan from the DPD that had the sight distance in there, and that's why they were removed. They were up to that point at one time. And the only thing I'd request is that we do that in field, and I'll show them on an as-built plan.
I think that's fine. It's just that sight distance was just to prevent tree plantings, not so much a landscape. That, there could be grass there, which would be a problem.
So you just want some lands, I mean, I think we discussed this in one of the previous meetings, that we run it all, we have to corner to beautify that whole corner there, right, Aaron? I think we discussed this in the past.
That's right.
Okay. I
Correct.
don't think you had any problem with that before, Mr. Close. Okay. All right. Anything else, Mr. Close?
No, that was my
All right.
presentation. Thank you.
Attorney Hall, do you have anybody else who wants to speak on behalf of the applicant before I turn it over to the public?
Not at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Would anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? Anybody in favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? Anybody want to speak in opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Any of the board members have any questions or concerns they want to address to the applicant? Mr. Gendron, please.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. I saw Attorney Murphy here a few minutes ago, and he was representing the primary abutter who had all the concerns. I don't know where he went, but I'm wondering if the abutter is satisfied with this plan. Has anything been worked out with those folks, or?
I'd rather not speak for Mr. Murphy, but I think the fact that he isn't here now might speak for itself. It would speak volumes of his position and his client's position, but I wouldn't want to put any words in his mouth or his client's mouth.
Okay. Did you meet with them and try to?
Yes, we did.
You did?
Yeah, yeah.
And was it a good meeting? Things
well,
go positively?
I think it was a positive result, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may?
Absolutely.
First, I have to tell you, and it may have seemed like this was a grueling process, but I have to give the applicant credit for at least coming back with a plan that really makes an attempt to address a lot of the concerns that the board has brought up over the last, I don't know if you've been here 2 or 3 times previously, but clearly there were concerns that we had, and I can, looking at this plan, it was really an attempt made to address what the concerns were. I do have a couple questions, and Mr. Close had mentioned the existing tree, the mature tree on Columbia Ave. Did you say every attempt was going to be made to keep that, or is it possible to keep the tree? I just, going down there, and I know that streetscape is, matter of fact, those trees almost define that street.
Right.
Now, it's just,
Yes, we're going to keep the trees. They don't interfere with the driveway, and the 2 that are on site. First of all, the other one's within the street area.
right, it's a
The first one.
public tree, yep.
Right. The other 2 that are on site, we provided an area around it, a grassed area that they can stay. I can fit the Dempsey dumpster in and the adequate parking. We lost probably one space in that area, saving the trees, moving the dumpster.
Sure,
So,
sure.
Yes, they'll stay.
And probably, maybe to Attorney Hall, would your client be amenable to restriction that, or requirement that the employee parking would have to be through Columbia Street in order to provide as much free parking available for patrons of the businesses
I think that was the intent
Okay.
of my client anyway, so I don't see any problem where the employees probably would park there anyways.
Would be required.
And we could require them to park there if we certainly would sign a document and submit it to the city.
Sure, sure. Okay. Again, I really don't have much to add to that. I just briefly go over, I know the concerns that I had and other members of the board was the landscaping in the parking area, and it's such a visible location. And we had an opportunity to really dress it up, and it certainly have made the efforts to do that. The parking was a concern. You're able to come up with additional parking on Columbia Street. Certainly can appreciate that. The snow storage seems to be adequate now at this point on the site. And you've addressed certainly the concerns that DPD had listed with the revised plan, and even to the point where I know you decreased the size of the building as well, not a tremendous amount, but, and at least you're showing fewer units. I don't know if that's the plan at this point.
It decreased approximately 250 to 300 square
Feet, sure,
about 295.
sure, yeah, no. Again, I commend you to sticking with it and coming back here with a plan that addresses the concern we had. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. Mr. Claremont, questions, concerns?
Just briefly, I'll echo the sentiments. I think you've done a lot of work to make this plan work, and be congratulated. But just a question with regard to the easement that you're taking on the new lots. That's to be a permanent easement to run with the land?
Yes, I have it in my file. I can give it to the Planning and Development Department, but it is a easement in perpetuity to construct the parking lot as it appears in the plan before you. And we have it executed, and I haven't recorded it naturally, but before we get the building permit, it certainly would be recorded.
And to maintain the snow storage area behind that? Is that also in part of the
I don't know, is
easement?
the storage facility on that, on the plan?
It
in the
looks to
parking
be
lot?
a snow storage area to the, below
Right.
the
Exactly as
parking area.
exactly as it appears in the plan, it would be constructed.
Okay,
Yeah, we refer directly to that plan.
all right. And that'll run with the land, so if this project ever gets sold,
It
the
would
new
run with the
owners would
land
have that,
in
that
perpetuity.
right as well. Okay. All right, and the only other thought I had is that perhaps you, I think you've addressed the landscaping sufficiently, but if you'd work with DPD to finalize the last few things that we talked about tonight, I think that would be great. So that's all I have. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
You have anything, Mr.?
I just have a couple of things. The buffer area, the landscaping to the corner, to the handicap ramp, I'd encourage you to do that. Maybe do some low growing stuff or work with DPD, so you don't lose any sight there in the streets. I think it's important, it's an important intersection, it should be dressed up as much as possible. The only other thing is the dumpster, the size of that, and the size of the truck that's gonna come in to empty that, looks like it could be a little tight. Can you just comment on that?
He's questioning about the size of the dumpster and the dumpster, the truck come in to pick it up, about the size. Do you think you have adequate space to get in and out of there to pick up the dumpster and put it in the truck and get it out?
Yeah, I don't think you could turn a truck around inside it.
Right, they'd more than likely back in, or they have the front end loaders,
Oh, okay.
Right.
you know, so I mean, I don't think that they get around those issues now, so.
So basically, the dumpster would be adequate size for the truck to pick it up, no problem?
Yes, I provided a 12 by 16 area.
Okay,
Okay, that's all.
okay. I just have a couple of questions, not questions, but I do like the fact that you did pick up all the new parking spaces. I think when this matter came before us in the past, all the board members commented on how this is a busy intersection and how this could turn into a beautiful site. But the major concern was the parking, due to the fact that with the different zones, how much permitting could be put in there and how inspectional services would have to enforce what parking would be allowed there. So the main concerns, when the plan first came before us, was the landscaping, the parking, and the snow storage. And some of the board members have requested even if you could bring the building down, make it a little smaller. If I look at your plan, you did work with the landscaping. You picked up a lot of extra parking. You picked up a lot more snow storage. The building did come down in size. The fact that you get the easement in the back here, and the trees coming in off Columbia Street, I think it really makes the project where before, I think the concerns were, it was kind of tight on site, and I think the main thing was the parking, and by picking up all this new parking, I think it really is gonna address your site and really make the site feasible. The comment about the employee parking, obviously, if they can park in the rear, it makes it easier for any businesses to have people who can park closer to the front, get out of their car and go in and get whatever type of business they need. If not, people might go to another location in the city, but hopefully with the employees over there, we'll make it more accessible for the public, and obviously, that's what any employee would want, would be for the public to come in. So, I think you did a good job on this plan. I think the new lot really opens up the whole plan. You know, it really addresses every single issue that we had, that we discussed from time to time. Like I say, as long as we have that easement, if we have that on record, and if we could have, as Mr. Close said, no project working with Division of Planning and Development to fix that landscape that you talked about from Wood Street up to Middlesex Street, I think that would work well. Aaron, do you have any other comments or something that we might not address, or any concerns you want us to address before we take this matter before we vote?
Yeah, actually, there's a couple of things I wouldn't mind commenting on here. The first one is on the parking lot off Middlesex and Wood Street, that I guess you would say it's the primary parking lot. The applicant did add a landscaping island. You'll notice also on there's parking number 15 in an island in kind of a tight spot. I would suggest that it would be better to eliminate that parking spot where it is, turn that into a landscaping island, move the parking spot down where the landscape island they added further down. Just because someone pulling into that space, number 15, may have trouble backing in and out, being right at a drive lane. I don't think we're gonna lose any parking spaces by shifting that around a little bit. They'll still meet the landscaping plan. It'll just make the parking feel a little bit more legible for those driving through.
So you suggest put the parking space number 15 as landscape and move it where? I didn't catch where you...
Where they added the new parking island.
Okay.
Yeah, between parking space 10 and 11.
Mr. Close, if you could just step up to the mic for 1 second. Do you understand what he's addressing, and do you have any comments on that? He basically wants us...
We can eliminate it.
Yeah, and then pick it up down further.
Could that be a part of the approval, or we just eliminate it on the as-built?
It's up to the
Yeah,
board.
but you're suggesting if we eliminate 15 parking space, you'd want to, you see with another place in the plan you'd want us to add it would be?
Between spaces 10 and 11. You may have to, there would be a potential loss of a handicap parking space, but there's a requirement of one for this location. and they've got 4. So it's laudable, I think, to have more than what's required, but I think they have far more than is needed. So there's a little bit of flexibility there too, to make sure that the circulation through the site makes sense.
So the question would be, Mr. Close, you thinking if you eliminate parking number 15, would it put it between 10 and 11? Then the question would that be if you could still pick up the 2 handicap, well, if they'd have to lose that handicap spot, and that'd be the question of the board, whether we want to reduce 1 handicap spot or keep the handicap as is, and then just eliminate 15 since he has the extra parking here coming in off Columbia Street. That basically your concern on that?
That's correct.
Do you want to do it either way, Mr. Close?
I have no objection. No,
Okay, so
we've
it'll be up
got-
to the board member whether we want, okay, we'll take that up in our discussion, whether we want to alleviate one of those handicap spaces or leave both of them there. I think you have more than you need, but it's nice to have extra handicap, obviously. Okay, besides that, Aaron, one other question?
The only other comment too is that at the entrance of the Columbia Street parking lot, there's the large tree I think everybody's seen. The way it's shown on plan is there's very little space around that tree. There's the driveway, not a lot of landscaped area.
Does that exist in a 5-foot diameter mature tree?
Yeah, that's an existing
Okay.
tree. It's a
On site here,
very
right?
large tree. The way that the plan shows it, it would be probably difficult for that tree to survive. It would be better if we could have a little bit more landscape area around that tree. One, I think, pretty simple way to do that would take a mirror image of that parking lot, flip the parking spaces on the other side, as well as the curb cut, so you have the curb lip near the big tree, and then you would just come straight back on the east side. Is that east?
So you'd suggest if we put the
On the
parking
west side.
at the bottom of the lot instead of the top of the lot, and that way the tree would be there, no problem?
That's correct.
Understand what you're requesting there, Mr. Close? Do you have any problem with putting the parking down low and,
I don't believe so. I mean, I'd have to
you have
look.
enough space, it's just a matter of accommodating that tree that he's requesting, but you have the space whether you put the parking lot on the lower part of your plan or the top part of your plan, it still meets all
We
the
tried to
parking.
keep it as far away from the
Yeah,
residential
so instead of
area.
having the cars parked up here, have the cars parked down lower, but
Right.
still in the same lot 57. Okay. Anything else, Aaron?
Again, can that be a stipulation?
I mean, we'll address that shortly, I just want to hear his concerns before we make a vote. Anything else?
That's all I have.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of
Sure. Mr.
questions.
Gentleman, go ahead,
Aaron, I'm assuming that all the abutters on Columbia Street were notified about this project, because we probably picked up a couple new abutters since we added a new lot to the project.
They would have been notified with the original notification that happened, 4 meetings ago, but since this change, there has not been a new notice sent out to any of the abutters.
Yeah, so all of the residents of Columbia Street were notified about the original plan?
As long as they were within the 300-foot buffer. I don't know if the ones on the very end of the street got,
So all I'm saying is that we've added this lot has grown in size.
Yeah.
So I would assume that the buffer for the project has increased.
yeah. But there's no new notices. Since this was a continuance from a previous meeting, there wasn't any kind of additional notification made to neighbors about the change in the project.
And all these neighbors would have fell in the area anyways for notification?
That's correct, the original notification.
Well, so how do we determine who gets notified?
Well, anything that is within 300 feet of the original parcels in question would have been notified. Anybody who were within 300 feet.
So now that we've increased the size of the lot, wouldn't that say that we should increase the size of the people that are notified?
It would have if we were to go through a notification process, but since this isn't a new public hearing, they weren't notified.
I have a little problem with that, because I think that this is a significant impact to Columbia Street now. And it seems to me that we want to make sure that we notify everybody on Columbia Street about this project. We're taking down a residential home on Columbia Street, and I understand the zoning is appropriate, but we're still taking down a residential home, and I just want to make sure we've done our due diligence with regard to notification. I mean, if there's people on the end of Columbia Street that are going to have a residential home removed and replaced with a parking lot, I would think they'd want to know about it. I would, if it was on my street. So can you help me understand, is there 2 lots on Columbia Street that we're talking about here?
Yes, sir.
And one,
There's a 25-foot in the residential area. The other one is in the business.
okay,
Uh,
so the 2 lots, one is in a business zone, and the other is in a resident, a 25-foot lot in a residential. So you have purchased the business lot?
Both lots,
You have purchased both lots?
as I understand it. Not an engineering question.
We have acquired an easement in perpetuity on the business portion, not on the 2,500 residential, so our parking lot would abut a 2,500 square foot residential parcel. There are 2 parcels.
Right.
And we did not get an easement on the residential portion. In fact, we can't utilize business, we couldn't drive over it, park on it, or any of that
Sure,
stuff. So that's kind of a buffer. I don't think anything can be built there. In fact, I know nothing can be built there
Right.
without the other part of the lot, so it'll just be a buffer.
Okay. But, but you have purchased or,
We have an easement. We didn't purchase the lot, we purchased a perpetual easement to
I
build the parking lot off the plan that is approved, hopefully this evening or whenever the board gets around to it. So we've referred specifically to this site plan process, and we have every right to build anything on that plan, or anything that you require that we put on that plan.
okay. All right. Another question. You're showing 4 units on the building now. Have you decreased it from 5 to 4 units? Because previously you had 5 units.
I don't believe the interior configuration has been changed. I know the outside limits of the building have been shrunk.
Right.
But we could very well have a 3,000 square foot business. I think one of the present hair salon is probably in the order of 3,000 square feet.
Okay.
So depending, I don't know what it's going to be inside.
Okay. So this doesn't necessarily represent the configuration that you'll have.
No, it
That's
does not.
to be determined.
That's right.
Okay. All right. And is there a access to the dumpster from all of these units? It's hard to tell what is behind the building here. Will the units, if you do configure it this way, or you have separate units in this building, will the units down the way have some access to the dumpster?
There's a 5-foot walkway that starts at the front of the building, down along the southerly portion of the building, then crossing over into the parking area.
Okay.
5-foot paved walkway.
All the way down toward Middlesex Street.
No, it does not go up the side of the building towards Middlesex Street.
Okay, so my question is, how will folks in those units down toward Middlesex Street access the dumpster? Out the front door?
Right, out the front, along the front and down into the back. There was also talk about putting in a rear door access.
I think that would make sense, because it would, I think it would be kind of awkward for folks to have to, if you're on this end unit, and you're trying to get rid of your garbage, to walk all the way out around the whole building.
Right, that was discussed, like a walk-through corridor area to get to the rear.
Would you be amenable to putting that as a condition, access to the dumpster from the rear of the building? I'd like to know if you would be okay with putting a condition on to allow all of the units access to the dumpster from the rear.
Excuse me, somebody has to speak in the microphone. Okay? This is on TV at home, so people can't hear this stuff from back there. And you have to come up and state your name for the record, please, if you would, sir.
I'm Paul Gaudette. There'll be doors at the rear of the building.
Okay,
That's required by the Mass State Building Code.
okay. And will there be a way for people to get from that door to the dumpster?
Yes, there'll be a walkway.
A walkway? Okay, great. All right. So, and I am, as my colleague said, also happy that you have addressed all the concerns that we raised here. And this lot on Columbia Street, you referred to some plan last time you were here that that might address the issues. It kind of came out of left field. The only concern I have, and I hate to do this, but I really feel like we should make sure we notify everybody that's in the buffer zone of this project, and the project has increased in size. So I'm going to ask, my colleagues if they'd be willing to delay this until we have the opportunity to do that.
Just for the sake of discussion, with regard to the notification, I think the people on Columbia Street would have received the notice originally anyway, because they'd be within that 300-foot purview, so they would have been aware of that. But maybe I could ask, these lots now that are being utilized for the parking and the snow storage, what were they used for previously?
Residential home.
And that
They had
was
to be
owned
torn
by the
down.
daughter, and that's what's coming down to put this parking lot.
In an adjacent garage.
All right, thank you.
Just to back up on the notification, I know we have two planners here this evening. I know we've heard from Aaron, and I know we have his supervisor, Mr. Parekas. George, do you have any questions on that notice? I know you used to be, you've been a little more seasoned on the handling issues with us, and been an employee here at the city for a long period of time. Do you have any concerns about that notice, or since the fact that it had the original notice and we've continued the public hearing, can we get your input on that if you don't mind me imposing upon you?
There is actually there are two ways to look at this, I guess. I mean, there's a 300-foot buffer from the original lot was notified. So that 300-foot buffer probably goes across Columbia Street to the folks across the street and down some extent, but possibly not down to the far end. I can't quite picture what the circle would be at 300 feet from the furthest corner of the lot that was first brought in. Looking at it as an extension of the size of the lot that it was originally proposed, you could look at the idea that you're essentially changing the project in such a way that you have to draw a new buffer from a new lot line. An alternative way of looking at it, though, is that because the freestanding lot on the edge, which is not owned in common with the applicant, and which I'm not sure, but may actually, if it was on its own, not be at a level that would on its own trigger site plan review, the relative difference created by that may be a situation which doesn't, because it doesn't on its own hit the threshold of site plan review, you could argue it doesn't hit the threshold of review. But short of asking our law department to answer how they would look at that question, I don't have a really good immediate answer to that one way or the other. So I don't have a definitive solution to that. There's a number of things you could do. If you decided that it was important to do that, we could certainly, if you continue a short period of time, we could send out notices without the certified mail as quickly as we can get a butters list back created and as quickly as we can send them back out. If you, but essentially that's the kind of the balance of the question, and I'm not really sure. This one's more complicated. This is something I'd usually send to our law department to ask them.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any further discussion from board members? Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, if I just could ask, and I know we had the director butter here in earlier meetings and was here early tonight and is no longer here. And certainly from years past dealing with a lot of these issues, I just would ask Aaron, typically if a butters receive notices, they'll contact the planning department to see the plans. I'm just curious, did anybody within the radius, other than the director butter, contact the planning department prior to the public hearing, just looking for information?
Yeah, no, I haven't been contacted by anybody for this project by phone. Nobody stopped in to look at the plans, so there hasn't been any contact.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
George, let me ask you one more question. So with the creation of, let's say this project, this lot on Columbia Street was standalone, and we took down, somebody wanted to take down the house and put in a parking lot. Let's say it was for the, we were creating the easement for the business existing, next to it, the existing business.
Mm-hmm.
Would that or would that not require, site plan review, or would that have to come before this board? That was standalone. Would that be something that would that be something that would trigger evaluation by this board?
I guess there are two ways of looking at it. If it was expanding a parking area for an existing business and the sum total of it was going to create something that was more than 14 spaces or more than 4,000 square feet of impervious area, that would trigger review. If it was freestanding on its own, I'm not really sure why someone would build a freestanding parking lot not related to anything else.
Well,
but
what if it's for the existing business that abuts it? You know, I mean, that could...
we would,
So let's say that there was a reason why somebody wanted to take that down. They would have the right to do that, right?
I
Create
think
a
if it was
parking lot
if
there.
it was the business that abuts that property right there, I think it's, the owner's Mr. Assad, it would come to site plan review because it looks just from this that it would be over 4,000 square feet of impervious surface total.
And just to follow up, if I could, on the original site plan without the accessory lot, I think the parking that they have, even though it was just at the minimum, did meet the site requirements on its own. So I consider this as being an accessory lot, additional parking, which we asked them to try and provide, and they did provide. So I'm certainly comfortable with it as is.
Yeah, I understand that, and I appreciate them doing what they did. I assumed that they were going to provide more parking at the last meeting by reducing the size of the building and providing more parking. This came out of left field. It's a lot, it's development on this lot that would have been, we would have required, it would have come before the board even if it was standalone. There's probably some residents that weren't notified because they weren't within the 300-foot buffer before, and now they are. And my feeling is that we should examine it, make sure everybody got notified. I don't want this coming back at us by somebody who said I wasn't notified and I should have been. So I think we should delay it and make sure we notify everybody. But I will go with the recommendation of my colleagues.
My only concern with regards to notification is, this matter's been here 4 times. The first time it came in, when it was advertised, we had no one here in opposition. No one, only one who spoke in favor was the applicant. Nobody from the public spoke in favor. Nobody from the public spoke against. So anybody on Columbia Street who had any concerns would have had notice of the project. The second meeting when it came in, and Attorney Murphy was present, he requested we continue the matter so he could meet with the neighborhood and the people in the neighborhood area. So that was his request. Mr. Hall had no objections to that. The matter was continued. They indicated to us last time they played some phone tag and they came back in. We asked for more parking. So as far as my personal belief would be that the communication had been put out, that we continued it from 4 times. We didn't do a list of the abutters. 4 different meetings have been held here in the zoning area. I mean, planning and development meeting here room with us live on TV. I'm sure the neighbors have discussed it once they found out what was going on, especially when Attorney Murphy got involved and Mr. Assad got involved. Now, at this point in time, they were the major concerns about what we were doing. They had no problem with it tonight or didn't speak in opposition, so I'm not going to say they had any problem with it. They spoke not in opposition. So therefore, myself, I'm comfortable that the notifications would have been accurate due to the fact that we had the 4 public hearings and notice was given to all people, and we had no people come out and speak in opposition. I think if anybody on Columbia Street, even though we get notices legally, then obviously I know when sometimes it's outside the notice zone, people in the neighborhood do speak, and if they have any concerns, they do come down. So basically, I think of the area where it falls in, I'm comfortable that the notices have been made accurate, and I have no problems with the notice being perfect. Saying that, I don't have a problem with the notice. So saying that, what's the wish of the board to entertain a motion? Sure, Mr. Lockhart.
Relative to removing parking space number 15
Right.
and dropping it down between 10 and 11, you'd eliminate a handicap parking
Yeah.
space. And I'm wondering what the ordinance says. What is the requirement in this case?
They have the handicap as needed, they have extra?
They do have.
They have the extra, yeah. So the question would be, we could either eliminate the handicap or leave on plan 2 handicap spaces for the benefit of the handicap and just lose 1 parking space up here and incorporate that with landscape. And then if Mr. Close indicated he'd be willing to work with the Division of Planning and Development to work with the landscape design And then the question would be if they still have enough parking, if we could drop it down here lower. So the question is, if we do move it, do we want to lose a handicap spot? And because I'm always of the opinion that handicap is good. I mean,
But they have enough, so.
they have enough by code,
that-
right?
that's okay.
So if they lost the one, they'd still meet the requirement.
Okay.
So, and I think they're willing to do either way. Right? Correct on that, Aaron, right? They meet all the handicap, they have the extra, so it's just a question of whether we want to lose a handicap, and then he could pick up the extra land.
That's
space.
right. They, like I said, they only need to have one van accessible space. They have 4. And it's possible they won't even lose a handicap spot. It just won't be van accessible. So it's just
Right.
the
So they could have the two
accessibility lane
spaces,
is
only one
narrow.
van accessible?
Yeah.
Okay. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. Any further questions for board members? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the site plan with conditions, and the conditions I'd suggest is that this property have the benefit of a permanent easement on the Columbia Street lots, Lot 57 and Lot 58 as shown on the plan, with the associate parking shown on the plan. That the applicant work with DPD to finalize the landscaping plan as was discussed tonight, and to modify the parking by moving that space number 15 in a manner that makes sense, and I'll leave that to the applicant and the DPD to work out the details on that. Thirdly, that the employees be directed to park in the accessory lot in as much as possible, and that the on the accessory lot that they flip the parking spaces in the curb cut to the opposite sides to preserve the mature tree that's there.
There has been a motion made. Any discussion?
I'll second the motion.
Motion
Mr.
made.
Chairman, could we add a condition that we make the dumpster accessible from the back, a door in the back of each building that gives them access to the dumpster?
Is that acceptable to
That's
amendment?
fine.
Ms.
I
Okay.
think they indicated there will be rear doors on each unit. There's a walkway there, so there will be access to the dumpster,
Okay.
so that's fine.
So that condition is on the motion by the maker as amended. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Motion been made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Anybody against?
I'm going to vote against that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So we have 4 in favor and 1 against. Aaron, do you have any questions in regards to the motion with the conditions, or do you want us to read some of them back for you?
Do you mind just running through the conditions one more time to
Sure.
make sure I have those correct?
Sure. One, that the property have the benefit of a permanent easement to run with the land over lots 57 and 58 as shown on the plan, for the accessory parking as shown. 2, that the applicant work with DPD to finalize the landscaping plan as was discussed tonight, and to finalize the parking by moving space number 15 in a manner that makes sense in conjunction with the landscaping. 3rd, that the employees be directed to park in the accessory lot. And 4th, that the parking spaces in the curb cut on the accessory lot be flipped to the opposite sides. I think 5th was that each of the units have access to the dumpster.
Do you have all those, Aaron? Any questions?
Madam.
George, you have a question?
May I just ask a question to the board? I mean, this is a nuance. In the middle of this discussion, and the applicant's engineer was talking about addressing some of these questions on the as-built plans, and I don't know if it's unreasonable to jump into the middle of this and discuss. Usually, we do like to see the edits on a plan before we issue the okay to the building department. If that's okay with the board and the applicant, we usually would prefer to do it that way. We just make it a little simpler for all of us to know we're reading off the same plans.
So, Mr. Close, can you make those amendments on the plan before you bring them into planning and development to address the landscaping issue?
Right, I'll make an appointment to go in and...
Yeah, go and we'll
CDBG.
sketch them all up, and then you can just do one more pass, and I think we can make sure those are all
Sure.
agreed upon. Great, thanks.
Okay, so therefore, the vote was 4 in favor and 1 against, and the motion carries. Good luck, sir. Good luck. Okay, good luck on your plan. Moving along, our next public hearing will be 76 Merrimack Street, 20 Decatur Ave, and 117 Salem Street. I'll give the applicant a chance to set up.
I'll get started, Mr. Chairman, while they're setting, oh, you're going to read it anyway,
Yeah, I have to
right?
read the notice, okay. Now that they get them up there, I'll start reading the notice, okay?
Okay.
All right. As indicated, this is 760 Merrimack Street, 20 Decatur Ave, and 117 Salem Street. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by Coalition of a Better Acre for site plan review of the project located at the above address. The proposal includes the renovation of the former St. Joseph's High School, located at 760 Merrimack Street, into 22 affordable residential units. The redevelopment includes 36,634 square feet of building area on 3 parcels totaling 19,593 square feet, and will include the construction of 23 parking spaces in a lot accessible from Decatur Ave. The project is located in the urban mixed-use zoning district and requires site plan review under section 11.4 of the zoning code ordinance. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. James Flood, 81 Bridge Street, representing the Coalition for a Better Acre, who is a prospective purchaser of the premises at 760 Merrimack Street, 20 Decatur Avenue, and 117 Salem Street. As the notice stated, it is their intention to do a complete historic renovation of the building at 760 Merrimack Street, which is the site, former site of St. Joseph's High School, into 22 affordable units. And that affordable element is to continue in perpetuity. So they'll always be affordable for really residents of the neighborhood. With me tonight is Madeline Nash from the Coalition, John Boardman, who is our engineer from Land Tech Consultants, and John Winslow, who is our architect. The plan before you tonight is very similar to the plan we discussed on the preliminary basis approximately a month and a half ago. John did receive some comments from staff, and he has made changes, and he's going to submit a new plan to you tonight, incorporating those changes that were included in Aaron's letter. I have also filed a petition with the Board of Appeals, and we're scheduled to be heard next Monday night. We're requesting a variance on the parking because we're under requirement, and also variance for land area per dwelling unit because we're a little short on that. And John will discuss the design of the building. So as to the parking, I just want to point out that as we did when we were on Moody Street, my client did go out and did a survey in the area as to what's out there and as to the parking that's available on the street, which I want to submit to you tonight. It's very similar to the one we did on Moody Street. And also, as I read Aaron's comment, I guess this board did do a survey in that immediate area in November and came up with the same conclusion that there's plenty of parking available on the streets for these buildings. So I'm going to submit that to you tonight, along with some letters of support from the House of Hope, from Brian McGowan, and some former students of the school. So I'm going to submit those to you. I think the quickest way to proceed is to turn it over to, do you want to go first, John, or you want? Okay, let me just give these. You know, once you hear everything, we'll be glad to answer any questions.
Am I on?
Yep, you're on.
Is this working? Yep. Yep. Good evening. My name is John Winslow, Winslow Architects. As you recall, we were here, I guess it was a couple months ago, to present this project, and I'd like to kind of re-present it as an overview, and then John Boardman from Land Tech may get into more of the specifics regarding the site plan itself. But just to bring it back to where we were and where we are. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this building on Merrimack Street. It's quite a prominent building. The proposal is to renovate it into 22 units of affordable rental housing, 100% affordable rental housing. The project involves preservation of the building, which to a certain extent drives what we're doing inside the building. We are preserving the facade in the entirety on the exterior. The window placements tend to drive the unit layouts on the inside. The proposal is for 22 units total. There's the upper 3 floors are typical floor plans of 6 units each. The first floor plan will contain 4 units along with some community space. We are seeking historic preservation tax credits, which is as you know, we received on the renovation project currently underway with the grammar school, and we would like to think we're going to get it again, but we're counting on it. The interior of the building, we're taking it down pretty much to the frame. It's a very solid building. We've had Chapter 34 structure reviews done. The building's in good shape. We are introducing, there will be an elevator put into the building, which of course didn't exist, so that's new. The other feature that we're proposing to do is, again, similar to the grammar school. We're having to build a new first floor because the way the building is designed, the existing first floor is about 5.5 feet below grade, and the windows are up at grade, and that's, of course, not an acceptable condition for residential units. So we're building a new first floor within the building, and we're taking the opportunity, given that, we're going to build the first floor right at grade as you come into the building front and back, so that we're hoping to have no need for an exterior ramp as far as handicap accessibility. You may note that we do have on the site plan, we are showing a ramp, and we're doing that, frankly, to protect. We might get beaten up by the historic people regarding what we're doing in the interior. We're quite certain we can do this, but we wanted to seek approval for a ramp in the event that we were not successful in building a new floor inside at grade. We are proposing also, the plan is very similar to what I presented several months ago, so I'm not going to dwell on it, but we are having a new entry from the rear of the building on access with the entry from the front of the building. Currently, there's a side stairwell on the side of the building with an access. We're putting that center to make it more accessible from the parking lot itself. The parking is in the rear. It's an existing parking lot now that we're going to be improving. Our original plan had 22 parking spaces. We pushed and shoved. We do have 23. We had hoped to get 24, but by the time you take into account all of the utility requirements, which John Boardman will speak about, the best plan that we could do was 23, which is still a little bit more than 1 per unit, which I think we found is hopefully an acceptable amount of parking. Another aspect of the building, which we may not have talked about before, is there is a sidewalk on the side of the building that we will be improving, so to make access from front to back, well, first of all, handicap accessible, although you can access the building from the rear accessibly as well. There will be, and again, John will talk about what we're doing with the buffer in terms of landscaping. We're improving an existing parking lot, and we'd like to think in all respects this is a win-win situation. So that's the overview. As far as the unit count, it's I believe it's the same as it was before. It's 6 one-bedrooms, 14 two-bedrooms, and 2 three-bedrooms. And that's a result pretty much of the pressures of the building itself, which I'm not going to get into unless you want to, in terms of where windows are and in terms of making the units work successfully. So I think what I would like to do is to turn it over to John Boardman from Land Tech, who has been doing the civil engineering work. So. Okay. All right. It's a requirement that you be named John in this project.
Thank you, sir.
Again, John Boardman from Land Tech in Westford. Not used to having people having trouble hearing me, but I'll try for the microphone. Usually my voice carries pretty well. Just to get you orientated on the site briefly, shown here on our color up across the top of the plan is Merrimack Street. Running parallel to that, at the bottom of the plan, just off the plan, would be Salem Street. So the front of the building is located up here off of Merrimack. As was indicated, the existing building there is going to remain with, we've made provisions for a handicap ramp in the front if we need it. In addition, the front of the building is being enhanced with 2 landscape areas adjacent to the front of the building to provide some planting and some greenery and improve the facade in the front. The back of the property located here, currently today is a parking lot. That parking lot is encircled with a chain link fence, and at this time is basically paved from the building to the chain link fence. The entire area is asphalt. What we're looking to do is make some improvements to that, bring it up to the standards of your regulations. Access would be from, actually, and to confuse you a little bit, it would be from Decatur Street, which is just off of the plan on this side, through Decatur Avenue, behind some existing buildings, and accessing the site here. You can see my cars here in blue. All right. The idea would be to provide a sort of a circular access to the site with cars coming in, taking a left into the parking lot, being able to maneuver through the lot, come back out to Decatur Ave, and then exit the site. We have a number of parking spaces along the perimeter, along with some in the interior. We've provided a perimeter planting bed that's a mulched bed with arborvitaes along the perimeter to provide screening, and then a number of shade trees scattered throughout the site here in the dark green. The existing site currently drains to some catch basins in Decatur Ave. The intent is to maintain that, and we have recently received some comments from the city engineer. We haven't had an opportunity to address those yet. We look forward to sitting down with her and answering any questions that she has, and those mostly pertain to the drainage and the new stormwater management regulations. The plan I've given you tonight has a couple of changes from what was originally submitted, and those were basically in response to comments provided by the DPD. They're really simple changes, to be honest with you. We have provided precast concrete curb stops on the interior parking spaces to maintain the circulation pattern around the site. There was concern that without a physical barrier there, people would simply exit and drive straight across the parking spaces to get wherever they were going. So we've added those curb stops. We added an additional shade tree and relocated them around the perimeter a little bit to comply with your regulations. The other thing that we changed was simply a note on the plan. As Mr. Winslow indicated, right now, if you take a look at my letter, there's actually a photo. The pavement from the street and the sidewalk here are even match. And the concern was that a curb would be placed there or some barrier to handicap access. So a note's been added to the plan. Basically, we want to maintain that level between the 2 areas of pavement so that a wheelchair could access that walkway along the edge of the building, around to the front of the building, if need be. Okay. Other features, we are providing a dumpster at the rear of the site. A dumpster truck could drive in. Typically, I see them, they have that front load, so they could simply drive in right up to the dumpster, pick it up, and then need be, they could simply back up and drive themselves out. It is screened. There's a detail on the plans of the fencing that would screen that dumpster. Other than that, I'd like to keep it fairly simple and fairly short and answer any questions that you might have. And
I just have one at this time, if I could, Mr. Boardman.
Sure.
I know you said you're going to meet with the city engineer, and then we received the comments dated May 2nd.
It's Friday.
Have you had a chance to see those, Mr. Flood? or-
We just saw them, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they were dated Friday, and unfortunately, she's on vacation this week, so if the board felt that the plan would meet your approval, we'd ask that we get a, conditional approval subject to satisfying the
Is there
engineer.
anything on the list that we have that's dated May 2nd from the city engineer Any concern to the applicant that cannot be accepted, or have you had a chance to look at it, Mr. Boardman?
I did receive that this morning, and we've all had an opportunity to go through that today. We're pretty comfortable with it. Obviously, I haven't had a chance to go through all the details of her drainage concerns, but I'm sure that some reasonable solutions can be worked
So
out.
most of these you feel are engineering adjustments that could be made to satisfy the city engineer?
Certainly.
Okay. And if that was a conditional approval, Councilor Flood, would that be any?
Well, yeah, I mean, I
You have
would
any
say,
problem with that?
I don't have a problem with that, no,
I'm just,
no.
want to make sure that everybody knows what
Yeah.
they're saying, and obviously we can't reach the author of the report, obviously, like, make sure that all parties are aware of it anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if you, since it's dated a late date, if you had a chance, but I know your new plans indicated that you were going to meet with her, and I didn't know if that took place, because, okay,
She's not in today, she's
Okay.
on vacation, I understand.
okay, thank you, I just wanted to make sure that everybody's aware of that, okay. Anything else further, Mr.
No,
Flood?
I just wanted to state that. No, I think that's it. I mean, I think we went through it before, and it's basically the same plan, and John had made those changes as requested by Aaron and the traffic engineer, so.
Before I turn it over to the public at this point in time, Aaron, do you have any comments? I know since you give us your written comments that were dated on April 24th, I know the plan has changed. Is there anything, as you requested, that they've tried to adapt on the new plan, there'd be a concern that you'd want us to consider while we hear from the public hearing?
No, it seems like everything that they made, all the changes they made to the plans addressed the comments that I had at least.
And one of the concerns, I know that came out in one of the reviews, was something to do with the, was it the water runoff, is it, or?
Yeah, that was the city engineer's comment. One of her primary concerns was stormwater runoff on the site post reconstruction of it. Although all of it now goes off-site and cheats into that catch basin in Decatur Ave. It's a combined sewer overflow, and she's looking for some of that. I don't know exactly what she's going to be looking for, how much, but she's going to be looking for some stormwater to be maintained on the site and some infiltration happening on site. And I suspect it's going to be more than just the added landscaping area. So that's her plan.
Okay, thank you. Okay. If there's nobody further for the applicant, we'll turn it over to the public at this time, Mr. Flood. Thank you. Anybody here like to speak in favor of this project? Just state your name and address for the record if you would please, ma'am.
My name is Suzanne Frechette. My current address is 174 Dalton Street in Lowell. I come to you today in favor of this project. I actually represent three groups. I'm an alum of St. Joseph High School, class of 1979. I was a longtime Acre resident back when it was Little Canada. And lastly, I served on the Parish Council of St. Jean Baptist Parish and was very active in trying to preserve the parish. I am very much in favor of this project for several reasons. First of all, I've been active at the elementary school observing the construction. I'm extremely impressed with the job that they've done preserving the school. Second of all, I'm in favor of affordable housing. I know how important it is. And lastly, I look around the neighborhood of the Acre and remember what it was like growing up French Canadian, and I realize that very little is left. So the notion that this building would be used for an important purpose and still be standing is, I think, a really important one. So I hope that you will vote in favor of this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frechette. Anybody else like to speak in favor? You could just state your name and address for the record, please, ma'am.
Sure. My name is Cindy Reyes. I live at 44 Ray Street, right here in Lowell, in the Acre section. And I'm here because I support Coalition for Better Acres proposal. I am for change in the Acre. I've been living here ever since I came. It's been 22 years, and I've stayed here, and it's good that Coalition for Better Acres is doing this. We need more affordable housing.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Anyone else like to speak in favor? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, dear members of the board. My name is Elkin Montoya. I live on 1521 Bottom Ave, Lowell, Mass. I used to, when I immigrated to United States, I came to live on Aiken Street and Moody Street, and I was raised basically around that area, and I think that the proposal that we have in front of you is a great, for several reasons, and some of them already mentioned by previous supporters. But the redevelop of this building, I think the number one thing is continue, as we know, all of us who've been in the acre or live in the acre, and grandparents, grandfathers, there were the affordable units in all Lowell, most of Lowell, to come to live. So that will be something that before I continue, I just want to mention that I'm also the president of the CBA. So, and why I'm the president of the CBA is because we maintain affordable housing. And this particular project add to that in the acre is to keep the affordability for new immigrants to come to Lowell. So that's the number one reason. The second reason, I think it's, as stated before by Mrs. Fischette, is the maintaining the historical site. The history of so many thousands of graduates that came to that building and has a lot of memories. The inside and the outside as well. The third reason is that the building will be a productive building for the city of Lowell. It creates taxes, as we all know that we need that coming in. And then number 4, I think it goes back to recently we have the MIT graduates come in and do a plan for the Western Merrimack, for the future of the Western Merrimack project, including the bridge. And some of the recommendations they made is to take a look at those buildings and make them beautified again, and the sidewalks, and the green light, and green effect. So I think I'm encouraged that this will be something that the CBA took seriously with the city of Lowell to make that changes. So this is our first step and contribution to that big plan that we have ahead of us. So I encourage you to really work with us as a citizen, as a taxpayer, and as a worker at the acre, working the acre. I think that this will be a great project for all of us, and it's a win-win situation. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to speak in favor?
I think, Mr. Chairman, that we have some people that speak Spanish, but we can bring an interpreter up here. They want to come up and say a few words. You want to?
Sure, if somebody can interpret, I have no problem with that.
Buenas noches, mi nombre
Ms. Reyes, do you mind helping interpreting for us? Excuse me, Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
We can indulge on you to interpret?
Mi
Thank you, ma'am.
nombre es Aida Pavón.
My name is Aida Pavón.
Vivo en la 9 Avenue B en Lowell.
I live on 9th Avenue B in Lowell.
Y estoy aquí para apoyar la CBS, para
I'm
apoyar
here
la
to
aplicación,
support Coalition for Better Acres proposal
sí, para un mejor acre.
for a better acre.
¿Verdad?
Eso
Ok,
es todo.
sí.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Reyes, for interpreting for us. I appreciate that. Does the little young lady over there want to speak too, who's clapping her hands? Does she want to come up? Okay. Anybody else want to speak in favor?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, members of the planning board, my name is Mark Ullman, 58 Oakland Street, Lowell, Mass. I'm on the board of the CBA, and I wish to say that this is a great project, and it'll be, increase the entire area, and it also helps in the acre plan, the revitalization of the 20-year plan that has been written and supported by the planning board and by the city council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. Anybody else like to speak in favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Any of the board members have any questions, concerns? Mr. Genman, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, you've been on this board a long time. I'm wondering, have we ever had an interpreted comment before on the board? Is this a first?
I think we've had a couple before,
Okay.
not too
All
many,
right.
but with
Well, it's a
bilingual
significant
culture, we've had a few
event,
people
nonetheless.
we haven't sworn as official interpreters, but usually good neighbors with concerns, and we appreciate that from this.
Well, that's
area.
terrific. So I had a question about the parking lot. Is this one-way traffic that we're putting on the lot there?
Yes, the intent was to create a one-way circulation pattern.
Okay, great. And it will be obviously marked with signage.
Correct.
As such.
Pavement paint, basically.
Okay. No, I think this is a terrific project. It gives us an opportunity to save a significant building in the city, adds to our housing stock, our low-income housing stock, which is an asset to the city. Obviously, a concern is always exceptions to parking regulations, but under the circumstances, given the nature of the project, and given your study with regard to available parking on the street, I think it makes sense in this case, so I'm supportive.
Thank you, Mr. Jennings. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, I have just a couple questions, just so I can clarify. I know in Aaron's letter, and I just want to make sure it's been addressed. I know Aaron had suggested, rather than having a dumpster, having internal trash collection. Is that, am I seeing that correctly? There is no dumpster, is that correct, or?
There is a dumpster.
In the current condition, there are 2 dumpsters out there today, and that's not been an issue in the past, and they're interested in maintaining 1 dumpster at this location.
Is that, okay, that's what I was trying to identify, what I'm seeing here, okay.
Yep, no. Located here would be a screen dumpster, so that they could come in, access it, back themselves up, and then simply head back out.
And is that large enough to meet the capacity? Is that, looks a little...
I would suspect that it might be a biweekly pickup, and that's something that can simply be handled with the company that's taking care of that.
Okay. Now, are you planning any lighting on the walkway that runs from Merrimack Street to Decatur Ave alongside the building where your photograph shows? Or
Yeah, we're showing what would be basically wall packs on either exterior wall,
Yeah.
And I suspect that the architects are going to need to work with historical to get those exact details as to what those lights would be.
And I know we had mentioned at the pre-application hearing, and we did that with the St. Gina Baptist Church as well, but assuming you'd be amenable to putting some sort of a display case in the community space to highlight the historical aspect of the building.
I think we agreed to that.
Agreed to,
before,
yeah.
Yep. Whether it be pictures or a plaque or something, sure.
Something commemorating the significant history that building had to the French-Canadian population in the area. Once again, as mentioned at the pre-application, I'm just delighted with the effort to preserve the historical aspect of the building architecturally, the external part of that building. I think that is, you're to be commended for that. I think we made that clear. It's not something that's required in this particular case, so I can appreciate that. I will have, and this was more directed towards the city or the planning department, and maybe it's my driving, I don't know, but I went on, accessed Decatur Street from Merrimack Street, clearly doing an illegal, going down a one-way street illegally. And I'm assuming there's going to be more access with the parking back there. The do not enter sign faces Merrimack Street, and really it faces St. Jean the Baptist Church. So if you're turning from Merrimack onto Decatur, you really can't see that. And I was just, if it's something that the planning department could actually have the traffic engineer take a look at and see if it makes more sense to have a one-way sign on the sign, so that when you're traveling on Merrimack Street, it's visible to you that that's a one-way rather than the do not enter facing. Because again, we're going to encourage, I think, people using that parking back there. One other question: will there be assigned parking for units that back there? Will it be first come, first serve, or will there be, one unit will get one parking spot?
That's what we anticipate. One unit with one parking space. Yeah. Yep. And from experience, I don't think some of the people won't even have cars. And I think Aaron pointed it out. It's so close to the downtown, and
right.
people don't need the vehicles to get there. So, but we will assign spaces. Yes.
Sure. No, I think this is a good project. I would hope it's going to clean that up. I walked that site this weekend. It's just awful, the amount of trash that's in that parking lot, and Matter of fact, that walkway, as it is right now, you couldn't get a wheelchair through there, which will be a welcome, I'm sure, improvement to the neighborhood. So,
Well,
once
I
again,
think if you look at the job they did on Moody Street, you'll see what they're going to do here.
absolutely, yeah.
Done a nice job.
I agree, Counselor. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Mr. Lockhart, any questions?
Just one regarding the back parking lot. The traffic engineer is going to comment. Here, I'll just read it quickly. There should be some sort of island to distinguish the entrance from the exit. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but how are you going to distinguish the entrance from the exit there, so it's clear which traffic?
In the original proposal, all we had in this area was paint striping for these parking spaces. And in talking to Aaron, the understanding was the main concern was that a vehicle might simply come in and then drive right across these parking spaces, perhaps to park here or in this area. What we've done as a solution to that is provide concrete curb stops at the end of each of these parking spaces. So that will define not only where these cars need to stop when they park, but also help to define that corridor of travel here, separating the parking lot from what is Decatur Ave.
I think, are you looking for a sign that says enter and exit?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Something to distinguish.
Yeah, no problem with that.
Maybe some arrows on the asphalt.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Clement?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a lot by way of questions. I think this is a wonderful reuse of this building. We did have an opportunity to take a look at the pre-application stage, and I think it's going to be a great project when completed. Just a question. You mentioned that the floor has to be raised several feet to come up to grade. Is that correct?
Yes, it has to be raised in order for the residential unit to be within legal distance of the window. I mean, as it is now, it's about 5.5 feet below the window. So we actually had to do the same treatment in the grammar school.
All right, and any issue if you're not able to get that up to the, is it 5 feet you have to raise it at this point?
No, we're going to be raising it, we're going to raise it about 3.5 feet. Okay. There's no, as far as I'm aware, there's no legal code issue against doing it. When I mentioned earlier about the ramp, I think if you're responding to that, I raised this issue because we wanted to, I guess, cover all of our bases. I mean, there's tremendous cost issues with raising floors.
So you're looking for the ramp to be approved as part of the plan if you're not able to get it to the exact level that you need to get it?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Just in reviewing our department comments, everyone seemed to be in approval. Fire department had no issue. There was an issue with the water utility, that the water service may not provide enough pressure. A flow test would be needed. Is that something that's been accomplished at this point?
It has not at this point, but it certainly will, and it's noted on the plan. We have a lot of older utilities out in that neck of the woods, and I think the contractor's going to need to work with the city to update those to make sure they meet the needs of the building.
Traffic engineers seem to be okay, and we already addressed the other issues, and yet to be addressed as the engineer, which you'll do. So I have no other comments. Thank you.
I basically have no questions on the plan. I believe we addressed this at the preliminary. I do like the idea of the project going forward. I believe that there is a need for the low-income housing in this neighborhood, and as indicated at the preliminary that this is going to be for the acre neighborhood people. We did approve the church across the street with the reduced parking, so I don't have an issue with the parking here when it comes to the amount of parking. I indicated that I missed the flood. They have to get a variance for the parking at the zoning board of appeals.
Right.
And I think you also need a variance for land area per dwelling unit.
Right,
Correct? Okay. So I feel this would be a good plan. I think that we do have a need for this low-income housing in that neighborhood. And I think as planners, it makes good sense to us to approve what the neighborhood needs. And therefore, I'm in favor of the project. And any of the board members have any further comments? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with the condition that the concerns addressed in the letter from the city engineer dated May 2nd, 2008 be addressed, and that they receive the approval of the city engineer. That's the only condition I'm aware of, but my colleagues may have others.
Did you need the ramp question? No. Okay, all right. Any of the board members have any further discussion? Any other conditions that they feel would be warranted on this site?
Mr. Chairman, should we add the condition regarding, that Mr. Frechette brought up regarding the historical, marking the historical significance of the building with the
Sure.
plaque?
I think the applicant said they would do that, but if you want to put that in a condition, I think that'd be very nice. I don't think, you have any problem with that, Mr. Flood? No? So condition doesn't affect you one way or the other? If you'd like to put that condition in, to make it a motion, you have any problem with that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, we can put that in as a condition if need be?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so the motion's been made with those, with two conditions. I believe one is to be approved by the city engineer and to have some, I think as we put it, some historical plaque area in the common area to address the,
I think when we discussed it before, we were talking maybe putting some pictures up or something like that. Yeah, I think that's what I had in mind.
okay.
Yeah.
Do you have an idea where that might go, Mr. Flood, once they get inside? Is it gonna
No,
be-
I don't,
Okay.
because I haven't seen the plans, but I'm sure John will come up with a
Okay.
spot for some pictures.
And any question with that, you can work with that with Division of Planning and Development. If you have any questions where to put that, I'm sure they'll be happy to work with you on that. If they have any questions, they can always come back to us on an informal basis, and we can give you our feedback on that. Okay? So motions are made with two conditions. I believe Matt was second already, was it? Okay, and, okay, motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair vote yes. Anybody against? Hearing none. So the project passes, so 5 in favor and none against. Good luck.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good luck.
Thank you.
This one should be, okay. Moving along, our third public hearing this evening is 61 First Street Boulevard. A public hearing will be held to hear all interested persons relative to an application by the City of Lowell through the Office of the City Manager for site plan review for development of property located on the above address. The proposal includes the construction of a fenced-in dog park, approximately 1/4 acre in size, on a 64,647 square foot parcel. The park will be accessible from the VFW Parkway and includes 23 parking spaces. The site is located partially in the traditional multifamily and traditional two-family zoning district. Site plan review is required under section 11.4 of the Lowell zoning ordinance. May we hear the case for the applicant, please?
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, for the record, my name is Ann Barton. I'm the Deputy Director for the Division of Planning and Development, and I've been fortunate to have the opportunity to work in developing Lowell's first dog park. A process began last year by an active, organized group by the name of Lowell Unleashed,
and the Lynch administration supported their desire to have a park of this type in the city. So we set about the process of selecting a site, and knowing that we have many children that need recreational space in the city, we tried to locate the best spot that would interfere least with that most important activity. What we finally zeroed in on was the First Street Park, which essentially is an abandoned tennis court that hasn't been used for many, many years. We also looked at an alternative site on the west side of the Aiken Street Bridge, another level area, but very overgrown, and something that we're looking at longer term for the same recreational opportunity for dogs, and maybe to build a little more on that. But that will be a longer-term design and more costly to develop. We have a group of students from the Conway School of Design. They're working with the neighborhood group on that. So First Street is a park that we're developing on a somewhat temporary basis until we can look further down the road at a more permanent location. We're before you tonight because the parking lot that we are creating, which will exist on the former tennis court, does consist of 23 spaces, subject to site plan review. We are not creating any additional paved area whatsoever. And in celebration of Arbor Day, we're doing significant plantings, tree plantings, a little bit after the date, but on May 8th, you'll see a lot of trees go in along the boulevard and around the lot itself of the former tennis court. So the area for the dogs is all fenced. It's fairly simple, fairly inexpensive to develop, and we're trying to make it the best we can on a pretty low budget. So we'd ask for your support tonight on site plan approval for the parking lot for this use. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Barton. Anybody else like to speak in favor of this project? In favor? In favor? In favor? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Would anybody like to speak in opposition? In opposition?
Hello. I live down that area.
Just pull the microphone down a little bit and just tell us your name and address, please.
Popey Scamus, 11 Reed Street. My house faces that parking lot, that dog run. And I was wondering how the dog barking is going to affect the neighborhood. Right now, there are dogs barking in their own backyard, and the tenants don't take care of them. And I was wondering, with the traffic that's there now, this will bring more traffic in the area and more noise in the area. Besides all the loud music that goes on and kids playing in the roadway, it's noisy now without having all those dogs barking. So I was just wondering, with the few dogs that are there now making noise, what's going to happen when all these dogs get together? And that's my problem. Do you want to say something?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask you where a house might be in
Sure.
conjunction with this?
Excuse me,
plan?
ma'am? Excuse me, ma'am? Could you step back to the microphone for 1 second, please? Mr. Claremont from the board just has a quick question for you, if you may.
I'm just trying to determine where your house is on this plan.
My house is on 11 Reed Street, but the side of the house faces the highway on First Street, directly across
Can I show you this plan?
the highway. You could say I'm on First Street, really.
Probably be up here. Yeah.
Right there. There's the tennis court right here.
Yeah, those are the candy canes right there.
Yeah. That's where my house is, right there.
Right across.
Right over the highway.
This is up in this area across the
May I speak also? I'm a brother.
Yep, just state your name for the address, please, if you would.
Nicholas Scamus, same address, 11 Reed. We're not against the park. It's simply, we're wondering if in the studies of other parks to get ideas, has the issue of noise ever been raised, or if that is a problem? We don't even know if dog barking is a problem. We're just concerned that it may be. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else like to speak in opposition? Anybody else in opposition? In opposition? In opposition? Hearing none, that portion of the public hearing is closed. Ms. Barton, can I just ask you a quick question in regards to the concerns? Has there been any concern about comparing these to other dog parks in any other cities in regards to whether there's any noise, or do you feel that where it's located would be the less chance of
Very legitimate concern and a good question, and we did extensive research across the nation on this. We actually had a lot of discussion and debate on the worthiness of this type of recreational use and the effect that it might have on a neighborhood. And I think that First Street is more or less an ideal location with regard to that type of concern. I think with the traffic that's already existing on the VFW highway, the additional plantings we're going to do and some of the growth in the river can hold that noise in. I think what might be a bigger problem in the neighborhoods are dogs that are not controlled, that may not even be licensed, and are probably not the likely users of this park. We have very strict rules associated with this that the council will take up tomorrow night, and if they choose to, will adopt. If dogs are aggressive, problematic in any way, they will be removed from the park and they won't be allowed back. We'll be monitoring this very closely to see if this is really the type of park that can be a success in such an urban setting. And we certainly will look out for the concerns of the neighbors. I've talked to a few. I think Aaron had a couple of visitors regarding it, and he spoke extensively with another gentleman on First Street, and we're all just going to keep an eye out for it. Any problems?
So can I just ask, what's the request on the council agenda tomorrow night? What's it on there for? Just the concept of the thing, or is it?
No, the city council has to adopt or change the ordinances associated with dog park use.
So it's an ordinance change?
It's an ordinance change, and they will also adopt the rules associated with the park. That makes them a little bit more official and able to be enforced.
Now, would that be a copy of the rules that we have in our packet here?
Yes,
this
you have a
evening?
draft of that packet. It was developed with extensive input from legal, from the clerk's office, from animal control, DPW, police. We all met to go over this because it is a new type of use, and we're probably being a little more strict than we need to be, but we wanted to start off cautiously, and if this is successful, we'll make improvements as needed.
So I see here, I had the opportunity to read this. You do have quite a bit of details in regards to the types of dogs, types of children, the hours of operation, the liability that the owners have to make sure the dogs are all given shots, make sure they have their own passes that they have to wear around their neck while they're on the site. They have to fill out the form, make sure they have indicated license, and they've all have received their proper shots. They do have to report any dog bites to the park committee as well as the police department, I see, and fill out the form. And there's a release of liability waiver, which looks like, and it took a lot of work in detail from all the departments that you talked about. I imagine had some input on this?
Yes, they've all had input on the rules, and
So basically, anybody just can't walk in there unless they meet this criteria?
Absolutely not. There'll be passes that are required, and to get that pass, you'll have to prove that your dog is #1 licensed, which it should be anyway, and have more than just the rabies vaccination, a number of vaccinations. And I'd have to say, on behalf of Lowell Unleashed, their primary promotion is responsible dog ownership, and they're very active in this. We'll conduct some self-policing of the park. Well, I expect that it will be the majority of users will be from that group. So hopefully promoting responsible dog ownership can improve things in the city.
Now, when you spoke with the animal control, did they feel more comfortable like having that one area instead of dogs just, I'm sure, throughout the city, correct? Like, it's easier to police and indicates that the police will be watching this. The animal control officer will be coming by and check on the site as well?
They
and
will ma-
monitor, and any
yes.
adjustments that have to be
They
made
will
accordingly?
make visits, yes, to the park, especially in the early stages. We're shooting right now for a June 1st opening, and they will have their eye on it as well. And they'll have kennel stations in the event they are called there and there's any problem dogs, so they can be isolated. And we're trying to prepare for everything. They, animal control guided us in the design. We have a fence with a, the tilted-in top to prevent escapes, and this will be Lowell's only area where a dog can be off their leash at any time.
And obviously, they have to be accompanied by a adult owner?
Yes. In fact, children under 40...
So they just can't leave the dog and take off and come back and let the
No,
dog play for a couple hours?
Absolutely
Okay.
not. If they do that, they won't be able to come back to
I
the
think that would be a
park.
concern that a lot of people might have. People just leave their dog and take off, and if the
Yeah.
dog has any, needs any assistance or is violating any of the rules for the other people for their enjoyment and pleasure at the park.
Then they won't be able to do that. Owner stays with the dog, and the dog must be in their sight and under their voice control at all times.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any of the board members have any questions or concerns? Okay, I'll start with Mr. Lockhart.
As I look at the plan, I don't really have a problem with the way it's laid out or designed. I think a dog park is essential for the city. I think it's a great thing to have. You know, I'd be more concerned about things like, are you gonna improve the lighting here, Ann? And what kind of an impact might that have?
It's dawn to dusk, so we don't plan on lighting.
There's no lighting?
No lighting.
Dusk, okay.
And it's essentially seasonal at this point because we don't plan on plowing it either. Mother Nature will dictate the winter use.
And I can see where noise might be an issue, but I think that's probably a problem.
It's hard to tell just yet whether that would be a problem for the neighborhood, but it's certainly something we'll monitor. We did not have any complaints like that from other parks across the nation. In fact, other parks have been very problem-free, so we're hoping for the same.
What about sanitary and health issues related to?
They have waste receptacles that we'll be purchasing to install there. All owners are responsible to remove waste, and it has to be put in the proper receptacle. If not, that's a $50 fine. And animal control and Parks and Rec were very strict. If that's not something that people can take care of on their own, then they would not be interested in maintaining that park. So it'll be important for the users to abide by that rule particularly.
And just one last thing, and more out of curiosity, how is all this going to be enforced and who's going to do it?
It's enforced really, ultimately animal control deals with any animals in the city. If there is a problem, a dog bite, by law must be reported. So people are instructed in the booklet to call Lowell Police Dispatch, who then sends out animal control, and they have a process for dealing with dog bites or incidents.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lockhart. Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Ms. Martin, I just, and I hope, I think, to the concern of noise, at least the requirement that it's open from dawn to dusk, hopefully would eliminate the possibility of, in the evening, having some dogs barking. But similar to Mr. Lockhart's question is, let's just assume somebody's in there after dark. How will that be enforced? I mean, will somebody sees that, do they call the Lowell police, or it's just you hope that somebody isn't going to be in there
I would
using it?
suggest if they saw someone in there after dusk that they would call Lowell Dispatch. And I think the area captain is aware, and, we'll make the patrols aware of this new park and its use. And dawn to dusk, if someone is in there after hours, it's certainly a legitimate complaint that police may respond to.
Now, similar to site plan review, we deal with pedestrian safety. I'm kind of a little bit different here, dog
Yeah.
safety. I just asked the question, and maybe I didn't pick it up in the material here, and I know you mentioned soliciting experts from around the country, and the top of the fence, the way you would have that angle. And I know the owner would be there. I'm just thinking of a terrier or something. How, on the bottom of this fence, is that going to go into the ground to a certain point? I mean, could a dog dig under? I'm just concerned because it's so close to the highway that if for some reason the dog got out of there, quite frankly, God forbid, if the dog's not comfortable and familiar with cars, I don't think they're gonna last very long, so.
Yeah. I think in response to your question, could a dog dig under the fence? I'm sure they could. There would be a breed out there that could probably quickly do that. But the owner should be watching them, and the fence will be embedded. It'll have a bottom rail and a top rail, and the bottom rail, when I went over it with the fence installer, will get that, probably the last 2 inches of the fence right into the dirt, just for that reason.
Sure.
To prevent the digging.
Sure, yeah. No, I think, there's been talk about this for some time now, so it's nice to see start to come forward. And now, when you envision this as a temporary site, how temporary do you see this? As like the Rook Bridge, or is it?
I hope not that temporary. I think that we're looking at probably 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
We did do a needs assessment prior to selecting the site, and the water department may have a use for this site about 5 years or more down the road. So we have some hopes for the other site that I mentioned by the Aiken Street Bridge, the Willette Bridge, that may be a suitable place for this type of recreation and more possibly.
Now, if I missed it, how large are those trees that will be planted? And part of it was that, if it's temporary, before the trees really start to mature and have some nice impact, and visually the park might be gone. I'm just curious to what size trees you're looking at.
I think the trees that they'll be planting, we do that through the tree program at Lowell Parks and Conservation Trust. I think they're a minimum of a 4-inch caliber, 4 to 6 inches. They're
Okay.
a reasonably good size
okay.
tree.
So the idea is to try to get as large a tree within reason in there so that you can feel the effects of it as far as visually
Yes,
and everything else
yes.
as quickly as possible.
And this is a good time to plant naturally,
Sure.
spring.
And what is the timeline on this? What do you anticipate?
With your blessing and the council's tomorrow night, we hope to open the park June 1st. We're really just waiting for all the necessary approvals. Everybody's pretty much in the wings, ready to go.
Okay, good. Great. I have no more further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Fischett. Mr. Jedvin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I wonder if you could, how do we determine the size of the dog run relative to the size of the site? It seems like the site is, I think it said 67,000 square feet, and the actual size of the dog run is relatively small on that site. Did we do some analysis to determine what would be an appropriate size?
We're using the same specifications that we saw used in other parks that had this much land available. It's about a 180-foot run total, the length of it from one end of the park to the other. And then there's a lot of other fencing associated with the, airlocks, the gates to get in and then to exit the park. But we just use some of the, if you want to call them standards, all these parks are fairly new, but we just use those standards.
Okay. I think there's a great need for a park like this in the city. I think this, while there may be some issues with regard to noise, I think this is looks like a reasonably good site. And I also think that the people who have been behind this effort are people who don't want to break the rules and let their dogs run in the neighborhood, don't want to let their dogs run in public parks where the kids are playing. They want a place where they can legally go and let their dogs run. So I think they're probably pretty responsible owners. I think they're going to take care of their dogs. I'm sure they will be there to oversee their dogs in the park. I actually talked to somebody who was part of this group, and they told me they tried to do it at some of the parks, and the police, of course, came and asked them to leave because that's not an appropriate place for it. So their response was, well, let's have an appropriate place. So I don't think... I think it's going to be okay. I think it's going to be okay. With regard to the noise, I wondered, do you think it would make sense to plant a few more trees along the, like you have a very consistent row here around the parking lot, which makes sense because that'll block the cars and the traffic noise from the street. Do you think it makes sense to plant a few more trees along the side of the actual dog run? Because that would, maybe detract from some of the noise that you'd hear from the neighborhood, and also isolate the actual run a little bit more from traffic on the highway?
We certainly could look at that. I know that this is an area where we'd like to get as many trees planted as we could, and the concept plan is a little deceiving. The growth is a little heavier on the end of the park where there's a radius to the fence there. There's a little heavier growth there, actually, than what we've shown. We're actually going to pick up some mature trees and rocks that are at that edge of the park. So I'd be happy to ask that May 8th we plant more trees if you'd like that.
I think that would help to maybe dissipate some of the noise that the residents might experience from the park. But other than that, I think it's a great concept and a good idea.
Thank you, Mr. Gentleman. Mr. Claremont?
I have no other questions. I just wanted to, restate, I guess, to the neighbors that were here today. I think that the city did a lot of work trying to find a proper location, and part of the reason they located here between the river and the highway was to minimize the impact of any potential noise on the neighborhoods. And as they've indicated, they will monitor it. It's a new endeavor for the city. They'll keep an eye on it to make sure that you're not adversely affected. So I have no other questions. Thank you.
I just have a couple of comments. I think there is a need for this type of dog park in the city. I believe that if the individuals who are going to use the park, if they follow the criteria as set out by the rules and regulations of these, as a dog owner, to make sure that they have their passes, to make sure that they have all their shots and everything else as requested by the ordinance, then obviously these are going to be dog owners who are going to watch out after the dogs and make sure that all the criteria is met, instead of individuals who aren't going to come here. Those will be the ones that just let the dogs run through the city, create your problems, create your noise. So I think if anybody's going to come to this area, it's going to give them a chance to let the dogs run with each other. When the dogs are running with each other, basically, as they call it, when some of these people met at different parks in the city, in the schools, they call it puppy playtime. And when you have the puppy playtime, anybody who's witnessed those dogs after puppy playtime, they come back and they're exhausted. They just sleep for a couple hours. And if they're playing, basically, you don't have the loud barking, the agonizing bark, bark, bark. Like when a dog needs something, if a dog's hurt, you hear that bark. But if it's a playful matter, it's really not a consistent, aggravating bark noise. I think the fact that it's a temporary site, I think it's a good site, but also I think it will give us the feedback before you do the permanent site, so you know what type of issues you have to look at, whether the size is adequate, what type of things in the location. But I really think by the river and the highway there, let's face it, the VFW, Route 110 at that intersection with Bridge Street is the busiest intersection in the city of Lowell. So we get more noise off that intersection than I think we would have from a dog park that's directly abutted by the Merrimack River and that VFW. So I think with the dog owners present, I think if any problems with any of the dogs issued, that they would put a stop to it before the noise get out of hand. And I think with the rules and regulations, hopefully it'll make it a good, successful endeavor for the city and for the citizens of Lowell. And I think it'll be a nice area, and I wish you well with the project. So,
thank you.
Having said that,
Mr. Chairman, can I
Sure.
ask one more thing? I wonder, Ann, if we consider gating the entrance to this lot. Just occurred to me that what we're going to have here now is a purposely unlighted parking lot, off the VFW highway, and I'm just afraid that at night, that might attract an element that we don't want in that parking lot. So I'm wondering if it might make sense to put a gate up there that we close at dusk every day, keep unwanted vehicles out of there.
We can look at that. I know just from visiting the site a number of times that the area cruisers very often are in the parking lot for the church that's near there, which is within about 10, 15 feet of the old tennis court. So there's a lot of police visibility here. For whatever reason, it seems to be a good spot where they sort of park and keep an eye on things. But I can check on gating it and see if that would make some sense to do that.
Okay, I think that would be good.
any further discussion? If not, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move that we approve the proposal for the dog park with conditions that we add some additional trees to the perimeter of the park to alleviate some of the noise that might be an issue there, and also investigate the gating of the driveway so that we can keep cars out of there in the evening. Or at night.
I'll second that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Chair votes yes. Anybody against? Hearing none, therefore the vote carries 5 in favor and 0 against. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The next matter on the agenda we have is the updated Hamilton Canal District form. But before we do that, we're going to take the, there's been a request by Board Member Mr. Genvin that we take the old business matter first on 868 Middlesex Street. Okay? So we're going to do that first while they're setting up their projectors on the Hamilton Canal District. So I'm going to move over to old business, 868 Middlesex Street. The board will review changes and updated plans to the site plan for the above address, including additional landscaping, island and trees, a dumpster to accommodate trash removal, improved site grading to accommodate handicap parking spaces, in the addition to a stormwater report and plan. The plan alterations were made in order to satisfy this condition based on the approval of the site plan. I believe when we were here last, in March, we did approve the plan with, which had new conditions, new drawings on the plan that night. And I believe part of the request was that we have those matters be approved by city boards and departments since they hadn't had a chance to look at those plans as of yet. So saying that, as I may, can we hear for the proponent on Middlesex Street Project 868? Do you want to start with Mr. Do you want to start, Mr. Mejia, or do you want to start with your engineering group?
Let's start with our engineering group.
Why don't you just give us your name first, because I know you've been here, and let the people know who you are.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We have company plans, just revolves the parking spaces. We got approved for the 40, but we went in front of the board, zoning board, and there were some conditions that we want to present to you tonight. And for that, we have Patrick and Jim with us from the engineering department.
Okay.
Thank you, gentlemen. My name is Patrick Colburn. I work for a company called Keach Nordstrom Associates up in Bedford, New Hampshire. We are the civil site consultants that were contracted by Pastor Mejia for the subject project. As you mentioned, the project is located at 848 and 868 Middlesex Street. It's actually map 121, lots 10 and 868. You mentioned that Pastor Mejia was here back in March of this year to discuss this plan here before you. It's a red line sketch that was done by Jim Wynn from GPI on top of a plan that was prepared by Frank Giles of Lawrence. And that plan was approved on March 17th conditionally by this board. And the condition was approval from city staff, namely engineering. What we've done is attempted to take that plan as a concept and engineering. And if I may, I'd like to show you what we've done. The plan before you tonight that Aaron, I believe, gave to you earlier, late last week. I think.
Yes, we have a copy. Thank you.
Is the result of our engineering and surveying work. Basically, following the approval of the plan that I just showed you, the red line sketch, Pastor Mejia contracted with our office to produce an engineered plan set for construction that specifically met all of the requirements of the city. We tried our best to keep the concept that was presented and approved by this board, and the result is here. Basically, our first order of business was to complete a complete boundary and topographic survey of the site. That's what you see on sheet 1 in the plan set that you've been provided. Basically, the site consists of 3 distinct buildings that are linked together. The site grades from Branch Street down toward Middlesex Street. and is bounded by Queen Street as well to the west. Basically, the proposal before you tonight contemplates the removal of the largest building here, 7,845 square feet, current warehouse structure, contemplates the removal of that structure that affords the opportunity to provide parking for Pastor Mejia's proposed church structure. The proposed structure incorporates a mixed use, basically church on the first floor with several office spaces for the pastor and some of his staff. And on a new proposed second story, the pastor is proposing 4 residential apartments for congregation members. What we've done is taken the concept that was approved by this board and tweaked it slightly to provide appropriate grade, stormwater management, handicap access, landscaping, lighting, etc., at the request of all of the city staff. As you can see, the plan before you here portrays 37 parking spaces. The spaces enter from Middlesex Street only. It's one way in and one way out. Middlesex Street only. One of the issues that was brought up by city staff was the insufficient access that does exist for this parcel from Branch Street. It's only about 12 feet wide and doesn't provide for adequate access. So you'll notice that we've provided concrete bollards in that area to restrict that access. I believe today what happens out there is some staff at the firehouse here park in this area and use that access. As well, the tenants of both of these units here, mixed use residential and commercial, use that access as pedestrian access. This plan shows again, 37 parking spaces with 2 handicap spaces. The handicap spaces had to move to a point in order for us to meet ADA requirements. Basically, ADA specifies that you can't have any more than 2% cross slope across the handicap parking space. They require an 8-foot van accessible aisle between the parking spaces and no more than 1 on 16 in a handicap ramp of this length. We provided all of that. As we progress through the site plan set here, stormwater-wise, the main complaint from city engineering was our lack of provisions for stormwater management. Under Middlesex Street, there exists a combined sanitary storm sewer system. And the city engineer is trying her best to keep new development or redevelopment and the associated stormwater from entering that shared system. So what we've provided is a subsurface stormwater management facility. Basically consists of a series of open bottom chambers that are inlet via catch basins, traditional catch basins. And the water is thereby allowed to infiltrate into the soil below and keeping it out of the combined sewer. What we've done is provide provisions for a storm event in excess of the 25-year event. Anything beyond the 25-year event would overflow the low catch basin rim and end up where the stormwater goes today, which is into this catch basin downstream on Middlesex Street and the combined sewer. We have sat down with Lisa, the city engineer, who is generally accepting of this proposal. She's very familiar with the land saver technology that we're proposing out here. She knows that the system we've proposed is not only going to treat the stormwater, but it's also going to mitigate that runoff that I just discussed. And she seemed very pleased with what we are offering here. She, unfortunately, to date, has not had a chance to review completely the stormwater management analysis that I provided. So to date, we have not satisfied her needs as far as the stormwater goes. Otherwise on site, landscape-wise, we have greatly increased the landscaping on a site that today is paved essentially from boundary line to boundary line. Those landscape areas, if you turn the sheet here, are provided completely around the entire parking area. you can see that we've provided adequate shade trees. We're actually planting 6 of them, which is required by code, as well where 3-foot setbacks to parking are required. We have provided those, and where 5-foot setbacks are required, we've provided those. In one location where we were not able to provide that in order to get as many parking spaces as we could, we're instead providing a 6-foot solid stockade fence made of white vinyl. The lighting on site is obvious with the symbols there. I think we're improving the lights on site with 3 new fixtures that light the entire parking area. At the entrance with Middlesex Street, we're providing handicap tip downs at the access, so that what we can do out here is tie into the existing walkway that is adjacent to Middlesex Street with our walkway that will be brushed concrete, and as well we'll tie back into that walkway where our handicap tip downs will afford our access to the site. We're providing on-site trash pickup with a dumpster pad here, and numerous landscape areas you can see that we provided in order to meet the town code, the city code. Essentially, let's see, about a month ago in April, we appeared before the Zoning Board of Appeals to request a variance of the parking requirements. At that point, we were showing a plan that portrayed 39 parking spaces. The outcome of that hearing was for them to send us to you folks, because they were hesitant to grant a variance, although very willing, until we received your comments. They didn't want us to lose parking spaces in order to meet planning comments, and and previously have received a variance for more than we can afford. And they were right. Basically, when I sat back down with Aaron Clausen, we've been in constant contact throughout the process here. Aaron and I figured out that in order to put a dumpster on site, and also in order to plant the required number of shade trees, we ended up losing 2 more spaces. So that's where we are tonight with a count of 37 spaces. It was our thought throughout the process here that keeping the, not asking for any other variances besides parking was more important, where we clearly don't need as many parking spaces as are required. We thought that it would be more important to satisfy the remainder of the zoning code and ask for a simple variance of the parking requirement. Jim Wynn from GPI, professional engineer here in Massachusetts, has produced a parking study that he's here to talk about tonight that justifies our parking count of 37 spaces. When he's through, the pastor can speak of his operation, and I can certainly answer any questions you may have regarding our site plan.
Thank you, sir.
Great, thanks. Good evening again. For the record, my name is Jim Wynn, professional engineer with Greenman Peterson. As mentioned, we were here before. We did provide the 40 parking spaces, which I presented to be an ITE requirement. I did mention how there's 4 apartment buildings, which the intent was to have as church members. At that time, we didn't want to make a commitment to that, so we're trying to leave them open apartment buildings. But now where we've reduced the proposed number of parking spaces to 37, it's the intent of the proponent to allow the requirement that those 4 apartments actually be for the church members only. So it's to be put part of the condition that those 4 apartment buildings will be church members only. I did have a revised letter, I think would be part of your package, in April 25th, just basically revising the previous letter I had stating this change. As mentioned earlier, and I know when I was before you before, some of the comments that came out of this board were just trying to get more landscaped area. I know this red line plan basically maximized parking and really limited the availability of landscaping, and obviously the landscaped areas there really didn't provide enough area for the shade trees. With the provision of that landscaped area and dumpsters, we did lose those parking spaces, but I feel comfortable by adding that provision of requiring those residential apartments to be church members, having that shared parking capability, that we still can meet that IT requirement, even though I still feel from our letter, I think it's an access to parking, but I wanted to be able to at least provide that industry standard of ITE and with the shared parking, still meet it with 37 spaces.
Thank you, Mr. Nguyen.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to be heard? Mr. Mahay, do you want to say anything else? No? Okay.
We have-
Anybody here want to speak on this project who might be here this evening with you, or? No? Okay. I'll turn it over to the board members. Any board members have any questions? Before we start, I had one question, if I could. When we were here last time, Mr. Nguyen, I know you talked about a lot of the members coming to the church would be utilize a bus?
Correct. It's a shuttle, and I think it's...
And I think that addressed some of the issuance that we might not need as many parking spaces if that bus was working. And I'm sure the price of gas now, there might be more people on that bus.
Absolutely. There'll be the shuttle service, and I think it's more of a van. And absolutely, those would be maintained as part of the site with the intent.
So you're still going to use the bus service and everything else, so that's going to help cut down on your parking requirement?
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
I know we talked about that at length last time, I think. Okay. Any other board members? Mr. Fischett?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just comment, at least for myself, I'm in favor of the going with the landscape improvements. And obviously, parking is important, and I think, obviously, we would make, I'm looking to make a condition, which you said are offering that the apartments be required that they're church members. Because I think really what we wanted to avoid, and I've seen in the past, is do minimal to address the landscape, and then it basically looks like a commercial building that you're trying to use for another use, and that's, in the end, doesn't, from visually, aesthetically for the neighborhood, it really doesn't, you don't come out with a very good product. So I certainly would be in support with the changes that have been made here. I think that compared to what's on that site right now and what we were looking at with the original plan, again, I'm much more comfortable with now putting the requirement that the housing be for church members. So therefore, they wouldn't be driving there, they're already be on the site. So that's all I have to say, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Genvin, any questions?
No, just I would concur that I think we have discussed this several times now, and we agreed last time that we could handle this as an exception because of the special conditions of your church. Now you're asking for a slightly bigger concession, but you're actually offering the additional condition of having the apartments resided in by church members, so that works out well. So I think the trade-off of having the landscape and the dumpster obviously make sense.
Thank you, Mr. Genvin. Mr. Lockhart?
I don't have any questions, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. I'd just make a comment. I think you've done a good job putting the whole project together.
Yes. Mr. Claremont?
Yes, we've had a few different variations, and I think that the plan that's before us tonight is the best one that we've seen. And I would agree that, you know, based upon your own traffic count during the church services, the maximum amount of spaces utilized was 12. I certainly would have no issue reducing by 2 the number of parking spaces. I think you'll have plenty, so I'd be in favor as well.
Okay. I agree also. I think basically what you're trying to do is it's a trade-off of the parking on the landscaping. And due to the past studies and the concerns that we've seen on the parking, I don't think you're going to maximize your parking anyways. And that's why I brought up the bus issue again, and what your study is of who's going to the church, and hopefully you always want to expand upon that. But I think what you're doing is you're saying, if you can landscape it all, make it all happy, make it all look good, and if we lose a couple of parking spaces, just go back to the zoning board of appeals for one request, and if the planning board's happy with it, hopefully they'll give you a little more leverage there, but they're their own entity. But obviously, if you meet everything else, it's a small issue, and I think that bus thing, that kind of helped sell me a little bit too. And obviously, I know when the plan started to begin when it was one building, then we went to the second building, it's really going to clean up the whole site there. Where
That's
before it was
correct.
isolated, now it's a lot bigger. And
Hey, Mr. Chairman, one of the things that we basically want to also focus is in bettering the neighborhood as it is right now. We all have driven by Middlesex Street. We have seen what's there now.
Right.
And yes, landscaping is very important for me in the parking spaces because it gives a different look to the neighborhood and for nature. So I'd rather go with 37 parkings than have 40 parking and just an empty space. I think nature is very, very important in this park.
yeah. I mean, and you know, I don't think you're going to access to all that extra parking, but you know, we always look for a service like this. I think you're going to meet the criteria, and the landscape, I think, here will help, you know, beautify the site every minute where the landscaping is only, I mean, the parking is, whether it might be used at this particular peak time where the church services are different peak times, you know, and looking at that service alone with the peak times at the church to be offset with the other type of parking, I don't have a problem with it at all either. I think it'll be nice when you finish with it. I have no further comments. Any of the board members have any further comments? If not, would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve with a couple of conditions. One, that the site plan be reviewed and approved by the city engineer, and two, that the apartments be utilized for the church members only to fulfill the parking requirements.
Motion's made. Any further discussion or a second?
I'll second the motion.
Motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. Anyone want to vote? Anybody in opposition? Hearing none, the vote carries. 5 in favor, none against. Good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Board.
Hopefully that completes your appearances before this board on this project. No disregard. I know when he came back last time, Mr. Wynn did a very good job of bringing up the date, and then since it was last minute of putting all the plans together, to get it hand sketched before us, that's why we sent them back before the board, to make sure they had a chance to look it over. So hopefully now it's going to beautify the whole site, and everybody will be happy.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
good luck.
Who seconded that motion? Who seconded? Dick.
Okay. Where's my agenda now? Oops, where did I go? Where did I put it? Where's the agenda? I think I just threw it. Oh, here it is. Okay, that takes that out of whack. We got the dog park. 5 zip. We got that. 5 zip. Okay. Moving along under new business, we have an update on the Hamilton Canal District form-based code. DPD staff will provide an introduction to the permitting process for the Hamilton Canal District and review the current draft of the building standards, thoroughfare standards, and open space standards with the planning board. So I guess it looks like we're going to have a little presentation. Yes. You have your mic on?
Yeah, okay, that's better. This has been the most, so far I've given versions of this a couple of times. I think it's the most visual way to address this issue. I'm hoping all of you, Aaron sent out a copy on Friday morning of the package that was handed out Thursday at the Form-Based Codes Working Group meeting. If you don't have a copy of that, we can get you one. I have a couple of notes here. I have a copy of my book on form-based codes and some of the examples of other codes that we've used in other places. If at any point any member of the planning board is interested in copies, reviews, any information about any of this, we're happy to share it with folks. So, but I wanted to introduce you to the concept of what we showed at Thursday's meeting. Invite you, if you're interested, to participate this coming Thursday, where we're having a follow-up session. Thursday last, we introduced what is in this packet to members of the public. This coming Thursday is even more of a working session where we're going to get into some of the details of how we address that. What I wanted to start with, and there's a lot of words on a lot of these slides, and I'm going to run through this quickly so that if you want, I can even print out copies of this and mail them to you afterwards too, so you get all of what's in this package as well. But just as a reminder, the Hamilton Canal District project, we set out to achieve 11 project objectives that the council, the previous city manager, and the city administration had set out to do when we first sought out the interest in finding a master developer to do this project. They include things like providing a link to the Gallagher Terminal, developing a signature site that draws off the successful reconstruction downtown, developing a residential component that appeals to consumers seeking an urban experience, creating a place that respects the pedestrian-friendly urban character of the city, acknowledging the historic canals as a significant amenity on the site, continuing to make the area safer, which has always been a topic of discussion in the area of Jackson, Appleton, and Middlesex Street, reducing crime, creating an active street presence, a significant population of eyes on the street day and night to try to create that safety, developing sites around the canal walk that make walkways more inviting and interesting, increasing the city's tax base and increasing the city's employment base from these parcels, integrating with related developments, including the new Middlesex Street Garage, the improvement on the Gallagher Terminal, the development of, that should say canal walks, although I apparently made a typo there. Responding to market forces and demands, working with the master developer, part of the strategy was making sure we have a project that is both financially feasible as well as a nice planning project. It would be one thing to do this with a planning firm and come up with a great project, but without a developer on the team, we don't know if it's been tested as something that they know they can go out and finance. And incorporating energy efficiency, sustainability, and renewable energy where feasible. So some of the project timeline, we approved an urban renewal plan in the area in March of 2000. By summer of '03, it became apparent that trying to do industrial expansion in the area, which is what was called out in the original plan, wasn't really viable when the industries that we were looking at having expand there actually decided to leave the area rather than expand. Proceeded with assembly of parcels, issued by summer of 2006, really realized that this master developer with a designer team concept was the most viable way to work to bring in a team that could design a project that would work, could bring it through the entire review and approval process. And we required some skills from both the developer team and the designer team, some very specific skill sets that would allow them to be able to manage complicated urban projects on sites with multiple issues of environmental cleanup, of canal and waterfront issues, of developing new streets, of addressing traffic impacts, of addressing all of the complications of building new on an old urban site. The process went through the spring and summer of 2007. We selected with the, there was a committee that made a recommendation that the manager then made a selection that was then announced in September of 2007 of the selection of Trinity Financial with Icon Architecture as their team. They immediately started the vision sessions in December of 2005, first with a listening session in December, followed up by a meeting in January where they presented some preliminary plans, a meeting in March where they presented some more detailed plans, which then led into this working group where we're working with them to try to address what this regulatory system will be that will support the project. The next vision session is May 29th. The next form-based code working group is this Thursday. There's also a traffic transportation working group 2 days from now on Wednesday night. I'm not going to get into a lot of detail of that, but they've also submitted a application for to the state, the Massachusetts Environmental Policy Act, the MEPA review to the state that was submitted at the beginning of this month. So there's now a comment period looking at that includes some, in the second phase of the project, some transportation improvements, realigning the Jackson and Dutton Street intersection so that Jackson actually meets Dutton and Fletcher, some changes at the Lord Overpass. Those are things that are all in the MEPA review, will be discussed in the traffic process. I'm not going to get into the nuts and bolts of that tonight unless people have questions about it, but I didn't bring that piece of it. Just to give you a little bit of a background on the development team, we're working with Trinity Financial as the lead master developer. They've developed a number of mixed-use urban projects. The two shown here, Avonair in Boston, is the one on the left is actually under construction in Boston now, a couple of blocks from North Station and Bank North Garden. You can actually see the steel construction from it as you dip into the tunnel off of the Zachem Bridge. If you're heading southbound on 93, it's sort of right up above you as you're going into the tunnel there. So that's under construction. It's apartments above retail with an interior parking garage. To the right there is Maverick Gardens, a project in East Boston that remade an old public housing site into new mixed income housing, and there's actually some environmental energy elements there. The building on the right, far right there, has solar panels on the roof. It's a very interesting project from a number of ways. Icon Architecture, the development team that also worked on the Maverick Garden site, worked on a number of conversions for a number of commercial buildings, mill buildings. The most interesting thing about Icon is that they actually are the firm that, in their previous iteration under the name Lane Frenchman Associates, before they changed their name to Icon, they wrote the original plan for the Lowell National Historic Park. So they have a lot of background in Lowell. I also believe they did the architectural design for the conversion of Keith Academy into condos. So they've done some work in Lowell before. They have an interesting background all over the country, based in Boston. I also want to say a little bit about Robinson and Cole, the legal team that the city has hired to review the legal details of the code. They've worked on similar codes in Peoria and Texas and a number of other places, as well as having a significant office in Boston that has a good understanding of zoning and land use issues in Massachusetts. So their mix of doing form-based codes in other places plus having the background on Massachusetts law was very helpful to this piece. This is the master plan concept they presented at their March meeting, and sort of digging into the core of it, there's a lot of detail going on here. I believe, Jerry, after the March meeting, you brought this back to the board and had a little bit of discussion with them about it. I can provide more detail as questions come up, but the basic strategy is basically building an urban fabric that links just beyond Market Mills down towards the new trial court site and towards the train station site, with the proposed trolley line running through the middle, a street network that circulates through the middle, a parking garage on parcel 14, as well as some parking kind of tucked into the lower levels of some of the other buildings, and also walking access through the Appleton Mills courtyard to our existing new jam garage, which will provide some additional parking support for the project. We're trying to save the outer walls of the Appleton Mills project, as well as building 10 there is the Freudenberg building that remains on the site, which could be converted into a commercial office building with the windows sort of blasted out to look more like the ones at 305 Dutton than those little boxed-in windows that it has today. It could actually be a nice conversion. It's kind of tough to see the way it exists now, but there's some real opportunity with it. This is sort of the pattern of what is included in a form-based code, and I'll get into a little bit more detail of that as we go. But I want to get to the key element of all this is that people need to understand that people often talk about architects saying that form follows function, and that building form is often based on function. And a lot of times those of us who are working in the planning world, dealing day to day with the way that these building forms actually come up, realize that form often doesn't follow function, it follows regulation. It's, you know, what's your setback, what's your parking requirement, once you lay all that out, it almost forces the building form in a lot of cases. So the question to come up is, you know, these are the drawings they've shown of what the Hamilton Canal District can be based upon that master plan, with the park and the walkable streetscape and the real links to the neighborhood, some connections between buildings, some key open spaces. But if that's what we want, and we regulate just on the basis of density-based codes, you know, I mean, this is a fine example of housing over here, but it's completely devoid of an urban connection. Or, you know, you can do office buildings, but you can sort of remove them from a pedestrian realm completely. You can do retail, but when retail has 65-foot curb cuts, it's not exactly entertaining and engaging to a pedestrian experience. And but if we don't get through all that process, we always run the risk that, you know, this is a fine Lowell example here of a project that did not get site plan review because it was below our thresholds and was legal according to our code at the time through some very creative regulation, but has been a topic of much discomfort ever since, and something that's led us to a lot of discussions about how to improve or tighten up on code. So, you know, I mean, the basics of it, what is zoning? I mean, it's regulation of land use. Many communities have codes that are outdated and ineffective. At least we come in with a better standpoint because our code was rewritten in 2004. But often zoning regulates what you can't do. And it's very good at saying you can't build in this area. You can't build above this height. You have to keep these buffers and backgrounds. But if you want to talk about what you actually can do, often people then build design guidelines on top of that, and often the guidelines are just guidelines, and they're very difficult to enforce. And then what ends up happening is we build the site plan review and special permit process to ensure protection from the things that we can't necessarily anticipate. That takes some time. Here we're certainly more efficient about it than a lot of other places, but there's always the time and uncertainty of a special permit review or a variance review or something like that. And then zoning sort of fits in with all of these other land use regulations, subdivision, wetland law, floodplain, building code, health code, design review, and all of those sort of layer upon layer to decide what you can actually do. So, you know, here are our existing tools, and one of the things I like to talk about is the limitations of those tools. And this is a presentation that I've borrowed from someone in California. I've given this a number of times. Paul Crawford in California loves to give this, talking about, you know, you do a use-based zoning regulation, and you got, you know, a district, like he gives an example of a business district in California. It's got 255 allowed uses, and, you know, what are the allowed uses? You know, baths, Turkish. boxing arena, chinchillas retail sales. Now, does that mean that a wholesale chinchilla sales is not allowed in this district, or I'm not even going to try to pronounce what number 41 is. Number 109, potato chip manufacturing. It sounds like a potato chip company came along and decided they wanted to be there afterwards, so they needed to kind of slip themselves into the list. But if you're going to manufacture tortilla chips, do you have to go back and change the rule again? Number 127, tombstones retail sales. Once again, no wholesale tombstone sales in this district. And number 135, just in case number 19 was not clear enough, is Turkish baths. So you can regulate setbacks. We've already kind of addressed a little bit of this. Sometimes you create more urban streets and you want sort of a uniform setback experience. But then, one guy says, well, okay, well, my minimum was 10 feet, but I'm going to put my house 60 feet behind everybody else's. Our traditional district actually addresses that issue by not allowing that. You regulate open space, and you just say, okay, we're going to have requirements for a certain amount of open space, and you picture you're going to get the New Hampshire town green, but a lot of time the open space you get is like the buffer between the parking area and the street, and it doesn't quite work right. You can regulate parking, but sometimes you end up with a whole lot of parking and not a whole lot of anything else. You can regulate density. All right, so we'll say, okay, we're going to allow 20 units per acre so that it looks like this nice little village in Washington, D.C. here with all these mature trees and beautiful old houses. And somebody might build something new that's like this, which is at that same density of 20 units per acre, but that's 20 units per acre too, and it's just sort of its own little enclave, and it's kind of lost from its streetscape and its connection. We can regulate streets that make sure that they're 65 feet wide. We luckily don't have really wide street standards here, but this doesn't really connect to a public realm, and I'd love to find the planning board that said, well, you can do the sidewalk to there, but forget about it after that. I know that we don't have those problems here. So, and what ends up happening is if you build up this sort of opposition to zoning, you end up with a lot of people coming out opposing projects from the first step, and you get that sort of, you can do it but not in my backyard, or it's like we set the rules and the rules are somewhat unclear, and then people are coming in for variances, and then opposition's forming. And in a project like Hamilton Canal, we didn't want the not in my backyard issue, and we certainly didn't want to find the cave people, the citizens, against virtually everything. So we tried to ask ourselves, is there a regulation system that can reflect what the community wants rather than prohibit what they don't? And can it reflect the community's character? And I take this quote from an architect in California, Christopher Alexander, who had been doing for a while a lot of advocating for good urban development in a lot of places. And the comment he made is that, after 15 years of advocating for good urban development, he said there was generally an accepted principle of what good streets and good neighborhoods in an urban context can really be if you try to address streetscape and character, but that there was still a disconnect between that concept of what a good urban project is and the system of regulation that actually allows the project review to occur. So, and I think we addressed a lot of this with the 2004 zoning, but he said if we know what the appliance is, this great planning concept, what we need is to find the plugs to connect it to the power grids. And the appliance can be a good urban project, and the power grids are the review process, the state regulation, the MEPA regulation, the fire department, the board reviews, the zoning board, the council, and all of this other stuff. And a lot of communities still don't have zoning codes that even address, even to some minimal extent, what they're doing. We've come a long way with the 2004 code in trying to address, when the council really had issues with zoning before then, what the expectations were for what's wanted and not wanted. To some extent, there's still been some tweaking and some details. But amongst Hamilton Canal, there's a real interest in trying to create a system whereby they can go out and recruit opportunities to finance, develop, and support projects consistent with this master plan that's gotten and is continuing to get a lot of public review and is continuing to get a lot of support, and do it in such a way that expedites the permitting process as much as possible when a given project comes forward. So the strategy of the form-based code is to sort of trade off some of the review for some of the upfront understanding in the zoning. So, what does it do differently? It focuses more on form, the big block on the right, than on use, like some of the use-based codes do. It focuses more on emphasizing mixed use, on greater attention to design of the public realm and individual buildings, and this is a real key to how we're going to address this over the next couple of months, on using upfront participation during the creation of the code to limit the need for individual project-by-project review later on in the process. So rather than using these traditional tools that we talked about, it uses almost a completely different set of, for lack of a better word, jargon, but I'm going to try my best to explain what that is. It starts with a planning process, a charrette-type process like we're doing with Hamilton Canal. I'll get a copy of these for you, but it has these things it does differently in terms of regulating development lot per lot, reflecting a diversity of architecture, codifying really what the neighborhood's character is all about. It's documented through standards, starting with something called a regulating plan, which sort of looks like the simplified version of the master plan, standards for open space, standards for buildings across the whole site, and optional architectural standards, which really don't apply in the case of this district because we also have a historic board site-by-site review on architecture, so they already have architectural design standards. Regulating plans, sometimes they go on the basis of frontage. I won't go through every one of these, but this kind of shows some of the other codes and kind of how some of these things look. Some of them are very big areas. Ours is more like, I think the last one that's in here, which is more lot by lot because it's such a small site, which really kind of goes through each lot and talks about what the opportunities are for development on it. Thoroughfare standards, you actually get something that looks like a real street section right in the document that gives you the standards for how a street is laid out. And then has some very specific requirements related to that. Open space standards doesn't necessarily design the whole park for you, but tells you the character of the trees and types of what would or would not be allowed to occur in those types of parks. Provides some clear language about what's allowed and how it would be managed. Functional design can be anything from how fencing works to pedestrian entrances. There's something on this one that says drive-through design, although we're not going to allow drive-throughs in this district, so that kind of will address that issue. I think we all tend to agree that that's not appropriate for something at this level of urban development. But there's a whole set of categories. And then building form standards, which really go building by building and building type by building type. And in this case, because we have so few sites, the building types are all really unique and tend to lay out in a graphical form exactly what you can or cannot do in a given site. These two are from the South Weymouth Naval Air Station. This is for an apartment type. This is for a commercial building with parking in a surface lot behind. This is Woodford County, Kentucky, that does sort of this category of height, siting, elements, and uses for each building. So if you're doing a building in that district, you take that sheet of paper and almost everything you need to do that building is on that sheet of paper in terms of what your regulatory system is, and it's very visual. This is the same for a row house design. This is, it's interesting, this site in Benicia, California is actually very similar to Hamilton Canal. It's an old industrial site with some building reuse and some new development, so it's a very similar type of design. And this is another one that just sort of provides an overwhelming amount of information on a single sheet. And then architectural standards, sometimes they go into the details of, how you put the curves of the windows, details of how every balcony looks, photos of every type of bay window or even designs for columns. But we're not really doing traditional architectural detail here, and it's in the historic board review process, and same thing with signs. So the idea right now is to do some general standards, but not to address detailed architectural standards in the form-based code for this particular site. The strategy is that vision sessions provide the opportunity for public comment and feedback. The regulatory code is subject to planning board and city council public hearings and approval as a traditional zoning change is done. And the street standards are subject to planning board approval because they actually require probably an addendum to the subdivision regulations to allow the particular street types they're allowing, which actually, they're wider than our standard subdivision street anyway, but there's a whole lot of stuff going on in them, so it's easier to just kind of start from scratch with an addendum to the subdivision regs, so that when they then bring the subdivision plan in for the whole site, it's got some consistency with this particular review process. So the idea is that, I think I went along. Yeah, there are 3 planning board votes actually involved in this project. The first is recommending on a zoning change to the Lowell City Council. The second is approving an addendum to the subdivision standards accepting the new street types and street standards for future public roadways that will be built within the district. And the third is approval of the actual definitive subdivision plan based upon those standards. Now, you'll see in some areas the standards will be more detailed than a typical subdivision plan. In other areas, they'll be less detailed with some performance standards that the city engineer can hold a project to. Then once you go forward, compliant projects are subject to administrative review, and projects with deviations from the code are required to pursue either special permits or variances. I actually have some flow charts I'll show in a minute that actually go through exactly how a project review could be handled under there. Where else is it used? Peoria, Illinois, and Fort Worth, Texas have a couple of interesting ones. Farmers Branch, Texas is suburban. Dallas, Woodford, Kentucky did sort of a countywide. St. Lucie, Florida, it's a plan where you can sort of take this concept and apply it to given sites throughout the city. We're not going to do anything like that. This is such a unique district that it's not really applicable anywhere else. It can't really be picked up and dropped somewhere else. The idea of doing a form-based code elsewhere in the city is a possibility. It may actually be appropriate for neighborhood business districts like University Avenue, but if we were to do that, it would probably require a completely different type of form-based code than the type of code we're applying here. So it would be a very different type of section. But some places have these sort of floating zones. This is not a floating zone. It's very specific to this. We've done some form-based elements, particularly in the traditional districts of the Lowell Code. It's one of the most significant Massachusetts examples out there right now. Brockton and Kingston did them in their 40R, their smart growth zoning districts, and South Weymouth did it on the Naval Air Station, but they have the advantage that they're completely exempt from the State Zoning Act out there, so they sort of were allowed to really go do their own thing to some extent. Here's some of my favorite quotes on it. You kind of look at the advantage of it. People look at it from different places. City folks like it because it shortens the review time for projects. It gives a better idea of what the city requires. This is from a banker doing finance, that it provides consistency of how neighboring properties will be improved. Home Builders Association is that the easiest way to facilitate projects is for municipalities to conduct and complete environmental review, establish desired land use, prescribe design guidelines, and expedite application review, which is essentially the strategy we're trying to apply here. And this one, which will always be my favorite, from the Santa Rosa Press Democrat: we can't tell if a form-based code is a radical green left-wing document or a developer-friendly market-based right-wing one. So we'll see which it is. And how will it work in Lowell? I'm going to go through what's in the handout that you have now, and there's going to be a series of opportunity for feedback. Any questions or concerns you may express today, we will bring back to the developer. Anyone who wants to participate in Thursday's meeting, we will certainly have the opportunity for review there. They're going to do a draft of the code before the May 29th general public vision session. There'll be more opportunity there. I expect that sometime in the summer you will be seeing this in a public hearing review, and then the council will be seeing it afterwards. But certainly, similar to the way we've done the major zoning changes where we've worked more collaboratively before the date of a public hearing, I don't want this to be sort of sprung on here at the last minute. I really think that any more collaborative, any interest people have in understanding and getting a better handle on the details of this, we'd like to do as much of this up front as we can. So just to show you some of how this works, I mean, this is the regulating plan that they're proposing right now. We're still tweaking a whole lot of things about how these separate zones work with different overarching standards. The zone that's Zone 2, which include lots 2, 3, and 4, have one taller building on it. The zone that's Zone 3 that has lot 14 is basically the area where a parking structure above ground would be allowed where it wouldn't other areas. You can see 6, 7, and 10 are the remnants of historic buildings there. The big question mark, Zone 4, is the courthouse. We're including it in our code boundary, but they're technically not. We'll see how they interact with the code. They're state projects, so there's some questions about their applicability to zoning, but they so far have been very participatory in the review process and the charrette process and the vision sessions, and how Building 1 is designed and how that courthouse works is an important balance together. To show you, typically this is what they're doing in terms of a thoroughfare standard. In fact, this one is their most typical standard. I passed out all the standards they've done, but their typical standard is 2 11-foot travel lanes with 8-foot parking lane on each side, a 5-foot tree planting buffer, and a 7-foot clear area in the sidewalk beyond the tree planting buffer, creating basically a sort of building to building edge that I can't read exactly what that number is, but it's 55 feet, is it? I can't add that fast either. 19 and 12 times 2, so. 62, I think it is. Yeah. So that gives you building edge to building edge. There's some detail down below in terms of the treatment. We're still working on some of that. It's probably a concrete sidewalk, brick or some brick paver in the tree area with tree pits every certain distance. And then, 8-foot width of parking plus a driving lane. But there's all of the other street types are really variations on this 2A. 1A, for example, is where you have the trolley running down one side of the street, so you take out a 8-foot parking lane and replace it with a 14-foot trolleyway, but it's essentially the same. One of the things that's missing in these standards that's not here right now is an intersection detail, which we're asking them to include some of these other pieces in the code, as well as eventually they will be detailing out what the expectations are under subdivision for how utilities and other underground type activities would be working in here. And there are a number of questions about, where does a utility box go? Can it go in the tree area? It's not going to go in the middle of the sidewalk. Do we want it too close to a corner? Kind of how some of those things are detailed. The next thing is these functional design standards, which apply across the buildings throughout the district. I'm just listing some of the areas that fall into a typical functional design standard like that. These have not been designed yet, and we're working with the developer to address, they need to address what the standards would be for all of these, particularly treatments on first floors in terms of how you provide transparency for a retail first floor where you kind of make sure you can see in windows and create an interesting pedestrian environment while still creating privacy where you have a residential first floor with windows sort of up a little bit off the street so you're not sort of peering right into somebody's bedroom from eye level on the sidewalk. Rooftop equipment, how you deal with handicap accessible ramps, where parking entrances can or cannot go, how loading docks would work. I mean, we're not necessarily going to specify the number of loading docks as much as if the building needs a loading dock, where is the appropriate location for it and how is it dealt with so that it does not create an impact. Then we get into the individual building form standards, and they've detailed out a couple of these to show how they all would work. So like here's building parcel 1, and there's a number of ranges of setbacks on each side of it. And what they're designed to do, and there's a little sketch in your plan, building 1, it's not clear whether building 1 would turn out. It's probably going to be a commercial building, but they want the ability to do a residential building if the market changed in such a way that they wanted more commercial further north on the site and more residential further south on the site. So this lets you build anything from sort of building out the full lot with a setback on the Middlesex Street side to create a little bit of a green space there, to creating a little sort of lobby entrance, which is the next one on the right, to if you're doing residential, you don't want a building with more than a 60-foot width because you want a double-loaded residential corridor, which works most efficiently for laying out residential space. So it lets you do an L-shaped building with residential, but certainly, this draft pretty much lets you turn it any way you want. We could question whether we want to more clearly establish where the front of this building should be and say, if you're going to do an L or a U-shaped building, really the entrance, the front should be more here, one area than another. Site 8 is in the mill courtyard and has some range of setback from the mill courtyard depending upon whether you went with commercial or residential, and then some requirements of which pieces, including the canal remnant wall, remains and how vehicle access is provided to the site. And then there's a number of others. I think they detailed out Site 14, Site 7, which is extremely complicated because it involves saving the existing wall of the Appleton Mills as well as providing a walkway through the middle. So there's a level of detail in those, and there's a further discussion about the comfort level with that level of detail and whether or not any other elements are necessary. But I think the key to the form-based code and the understanding of the strategy of it is it is designed under, and we are financing, supporting the legal review of it under this expedited permitting grant we have from the state. It's designed to be a part of this expedited permitting process, which tries to address the community concerns and the review concerns up front for a project, and thereby allowing a consistent project to be a by right approval. So I think the most significant thing I can stress is that for all practical purposes, the typical site plan review type review done on this project is done through the zoning code review and the zoning code approval in the next couple of months, rather than done on a building by building basis further down. So the reason why I'm bringing these to you early is because to have that discussion so that if there's feedback and interest in review and the level of detail of what the understanding is of these individual buildings, that we try to make sure that they're addressed in the code document to a level that we're comfortable with, that the board's comfortable with, that the public's comfortable with, that we know we're going to get the master plan that was promised out of it. A basic approval of a building that's consistent with the code would be consistent with the 30-day typical review of a building permit, only with the addition of the fact that there will probably be a small review committee in addition to the building commissioner that will get a chance to look at this, address consistency with the code since there are some additional design elements to it, make sure it meets the code, and then issue back a statement that was basically a certificate of consistency. The building commissioner would be looking for that certificate as well as the typical architectural review of the historic board, plus any conservation type review, as well as the state permits which are in process at this point in order to issue a building permit. What gets more interesting is if a project is not consistent with the review, and we set up two ways to do that. I mean, one situation is a project comes in where the developer thinks they're consistent, or where the developer has some radical issue with it. They submit something as if they're consistent, and what will come out of the review committee is a statement that it is not consistent with the code. Inspectional services would then issue a denial through the building permit, and then you could either go for a variance or do an appeal to the building commissioner's decision. And typically that denial from the committee would explain why the committee is doing the denial, and would explain why that, what their feeling is on whether or not that appeal is appropriate. But a variance is a very high standard, particularly for code that's that detailed. So after a lot of discussion back and forth with the developer on sort of how to address the middle ground, sort of the project that's, and what we're referring to as a project that's consistent with the master plan, that is, functionally works consistent with the intent of the master plan, but is not consistent with the code because of some element of that code that was not thought of or not considered under review in that particular circumstance, but that therefore would need some level of review to say, all right, we're going to waive this height requirement by 3 feet to let you put this, solar panel on the building or something like that, because it's consistent with the original goal of doing renewable energy, it's consistent with the general idea of the master plan of what we're trying to get, but it violates the height requirement of the code by 3 feet. And in that circumstance, what we're looking at doing is bringing that sort of project through a planning board special permit process, where the review process that you would be looking at in that situation is answering the question, is it consistent with the intent of the master plan? Is the reason it's violating the code because of something that was not considered at the time that the code was first reviewed by all of us? And basically from there, is it still a good project under those circumstances? And then with that special permit, they'd be able to go back through, have the rest of it reviewed for consistency with the code, and get the typical approval under that concept. So that's, I don't know if these three flow charts were in the handout. Some copies of them had them and some didn't. So if you don't have them, I can make sure to get you a copy of the whole presentation because it includes all of them. But that's the strategy we're working through today. So, you'll see a lot of these have handwritten notes on them. They really are works in progress. We're working on the administrative review. We're working with the developer they're working on the design review, and we're sort of, kind of going back and forth a little bit on making sure that we get enough of a design review so that we feel comfortable with it. Where I really need the board's assistance is ensuring that you get enough information in this code when you're ready that you feel comfortable with the idea that a consistent project, consistent with the master plan and the support level, it's hopefully going to get from the community, and the board would allow you to feel okay with that review process as it's been designed. So that's where it is. I know it's kind of a long presentation and there was a lot in there, but I wanted to make sure we open up the discussion tonight so that it doesn't slip another few weeks with the time remaining to talk about this project. So I'm available to answer questions or assist any way I can.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say I think it sounds like an innovative strategy for dealing with new development like this. I think the Hamilton Canal District is a unique opportunity, right, to use something like this. I think It would be hard, as you stated, to implement something like this sort of after the fact in the neighborhoods. But where you're starting from sort of a clean slate here, I think, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it would streamline development, and it's in an area that is, it's not, won't be as sensitive, I don't think, to kind of neighborhood issues with regard to zoning and, residents issues with regard to zoning. So you know, I like what you've said here, and look forward to getting more details about what the actual code will look like and, you know, in the future.
Well, thank you, sure, and it is a very unique site. There are places that have done this in existing context with multiple landowners, but it is a lot more complicated. It takes a lot, there's a lot more, you know, need to do a lot of outreach and explanation and review and consensus building to do that sort of thing. This type of detail that's being done in this particular code works very well when you have one developer in a site that has had a significant amount of disinvestment over the years and a lot of interest in sort of seeing things happen quickly and in a positive manner. So I think it works. We do have a limited number of abutters, and the good news is that where we do have abutters, they're engaged in the process now. I mean, most significantly, I think the folks at Cotton House Lofts on Jackson Street and Canal Place 3 are closest to this existing site, where they will be essentially looking at it every day out their windows, and a lot of them have been participating in the process to date, and I'm sure we'll continue to. So we're trying as much as we can to engage anybody who would be an impact now, but you're right, essentially it's not like diving this into the middle of a existing residential neighborhood where there would be, you know, potentially significant impacts all around on every side, and then trying to pull things out of the site plan review process would be much more complicated under those circumstances.
I think it'd be nice how you come in, change the zoning code, so everybody knows what the criteria is down there, and instead of trying to do it piecemeal by building, because that's where you have, it's more difficult to implement, because each individual person coming before us is going to think their project might be a little nicer than the other project, or this one works better for them. This way, when you have it set up, everybody knows exactly what they have to do, and the requirements are getting it's faster than coming before us. If you know the overall scheme, the permitting authority as you've gone through, makes it quicker, it's easier, the review is faster, swifter back before them, and therefore they know exactly what they have to meet in that criteria. Instead of trying to come in and change them and then try to make all these pieces fit, you have the big overview to begin with, and then people know exactly what's required in that zone. And I think that would make it a lot easier, especially in a downtown neighborhood. I think it'd be, you know, a lot easier to deal with. People are going to know exactly what they can put in, what they can't put in, and what's going to make it look nice to, you know, complement all the buildings around it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that'll work nice.
All right.
I'm curious, George, you had a lot of examples of other areas in the country that have attempted the form-based code, and I presume, you know, it works best either a new city or a new area of the city or an area that's being completely redeveloped in order to make that work. But what's the data after that's been passed and developed and gone on to fruition in the other areas?
I mean, the codes that have been around the longest are in development sites that were owned by a developer that basically worked with the community themselves to set it up and have been building under that code for, I mean, the case of like Kentlands in Maryland, probably about 17 years now. In a case like Kentlands, like that, I mean, you can see the on-the-ground result of it, and it's a community that's it's more suburban in type than what we're looking at, but its total build-out has worked pretty well, and you can sort of see the maturity of it. It looks like an old town to some extent because that was the look they were trying to go for, and there's a detailed sort of traditional architectural code that goes with that project. So it's worked really well. What's happened over more recent years is people have been working to apply them to a number of other types of areas. I'm trying to think of where most recently they've been done in. I'm going to go back to my list here in urban redevelopment sites. I believe some of the California downtowns, Ventura and Azusa, have had a number of. And they're interesting cases because they are existing sites with multiple landowners and some complicated development regulation to work, but they've gotten a lot of consensus and they have gotten new development done according to the code, and I could probably find some examples of those. Peoria is a little bit more recent, as is Farmers Branch. Fort Worth in Texas that area, that south side is an entire neighborhood that they redid, and I'm not sure if much has been developed under it yet. A lot of them are more similar to South Weymouth, where you have 1,000 acres of wide open space, and you're laying out an entire set of neighborhoods and basically rules for different types of neighborhoods. So, they've been pretty successful in those circumstances. There's sort of a general set rule. The 40R district, the rules when 40R, the smart growth zoning in Massachusetts was set up, were almost designed to encourage the form-based code type of design. It encourages you to set up a design standard. It frees you from some of the structure of architectural zoning otherwise, and Brockton and Kingston in particular have brought a lot of their detail into their plan of what they expect in those districts. The challenge with 40R is there's some strict regulation on percentages of affordable housing and kind of the way that affordable housing is distributed through the site, which may be more difficult to meet in a smaller site like Hamilton Canal, where even if the developer wanted to do 20% affordable housing, they may want to concentrate 40% in one project and make another all market rate, and 40R won't let you do that. Well, Brockton and Kingston have, they had districts that worked. We actually are looking at 40R for one site in Lowell for where the old CMAA building is. Architectural Heritage Foundation has that and the old Ad and Furniture building, and they have a proposal that they got council approval to have the state review that we will eventually see a district, but it's not form-based. It's just two buildings that fully fill their existing site, so there really wasn't an attempt to do that. I talked a lot. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, well, and the 40R is basically almost an exemption to the zoning for a specific reason. Of course, a naval air station is a totally different animal. So, I mean, in this area, it looks like it hasn't been, this be the only area that's been done to this extent.
In Massachusetts, we're certainly breaking new ground. The closest example I've got is, and it's still a work in progress. They're sort of working a bit ahead of us. Is Benicia, California? They did their downtown, and now they're doing this. It's called the Lower Arsenal. It's the Lower Arsenal District, Lower Arsenal Mixed Use District. And what it is it's an old industrial. I think it's actually military, and they have sections and subsections. I think one of the plans here I showed, one of the site plans is a piece of that, and it establishes basically sites where old and new roads are, specifically lettered district sites for development, and then when you get to the building standard for it, this is like one building, and it sets the setbacks on each side and kind of how that building, where it must build to, kind of how it works, how the form works on it. So they're working on a very similar concept and similar level of detail to what we're doing. So that's the closest example. To some extent, the combination of fitting it into Massachusetts land use regulation, the awkwardness of having to split street standards and zoning apart, because typically they like to do it as like California lets you do a combined development code where you can throw subdivision and zoning together. We're not allowed to do that under 40A and under 41 in Massachusetts general laws, so we have to create a combined document but then split it in half, pass it separately, and then essentially treat it as a combined document when we actually review projects under it. So it's doable. It just requires a little bit more thought. Robinson & Cole's a great team to work with because they have both developed these codes in other places and they have extensive Massachusetts zoning experience. What they have not done is put those two areas of expertise together yet, but they're working with us on that, and they've been really helpful so far.
Right. Well, I think it's going to be a fascinating process, and I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. If you look at individual sites, a 20-foot setback is not the same as what it might be on another site. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that works through. And I think I'll make a motion for the planning board to take maybe a road trip to one of these sites, either the Florida or California. you guys can pick.
Do I have a second on that motion?
I'll also suggest that you ask the council for funding for that.
I thought you were going to tell us to go downtown. We already here. We want to thank you very much for your presentation, and we look forward to hearing more about this project as it moves along. I'm sure it's a lot of time consuming.
It's certainly, there's been a lot of our staff time spent on trying to make sure we get this.
I mean, you figure it's the biggest project that you've been dealing with for,
Yeah.
This isn't something that comes in very often.
No, but it's
obviously, if it's done right, it'll definitely pay.
It's an exciting opportunity, and it's really interesting, and the format of the project and the master plan, this process lends itself well to addressing this site. We are being, the folks at the state level who are trying to work on expedited permitting and are very interested in working on trying to facilitate economic development and job creation projects on specific sites throughout the state are watching us. They think that we have a very interesting way of doing this, and they're hoping to use us as a model for other places as well. So we're all kind of working together on trying to work this all out the best we can.
Great. Well, thanks again. We wish you well in this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving along on the agenda, we've taken care of all the public hearings. We've done the update on the Hamilton Canal. On the new business, we've had old business, we addressed that. We took care of the lot release. Other businesses, notices from abutting towns. Entertain a motion to place all on file.
So moved.
We all received a copy of the A&R report. We can place that on file if that's agreeable by all parties. Okay, we'll place that on file as well. And then moving along, we do have the zoning board of appeals notices. These are matters that will be appearing before the zoning board of appeals meeting on May 12th, to be held here at the city council chambers. They have, it appears, 5 matters before them for public hearing under new businesses. The first matter is for a special permit on telecommunications. It is Sprint Wireless Broadband Company, LLC, and affiliated Nextel Communications for the Mid-Atlantic Inc. And the property is located at 605 Lawrence Street, also known as 649 Lawrence Street. And this is in the traditional mixed-use zone for the addition of 3 panel antennas to an existing smokestack. There'll be 2 equipment cabinets, an existing equipment room, coaxial cable, and GPS antenna to existing telecommunications site according to section 7.6 of the zoning ordinance. We do have a pretty detailed packet that was given to us with a narrative as well as a plan. So it looks like they want to put the antennas on top of the existing smokestack, which is over by, I think it's, in the comments said it was pretty close to Fort Hill by Lawrence Street. Yeah, it says site name was over by Fort Hill Park area. So they want to put this in because this will provide high-speed internet service.
Mr. Chairman, where they are making use of an existing structure, probably less intrusive than a freestanding structure, I'd probably make a motion to recommend approval.
I'll second the motion.
So there have been a motion to recommend approval due to the fact that it is already an existing structure and they're only going to add antennas to that. The motion is made and second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Chair votes yes. Anybody against? Therefore, the motion carries to for recommendation on that special permit. The next matter is a special permit, Stanley Solokowski for 774 Dutton Street. This is light industrial to allow an additional use of a takeout coffee shop within an existing building according to section 12.4D of the table of uses. So he wants to put a small coffee shop in by Dutton Street. Probably before the Dunkin' Donuts gets built, huh? Yeah, it's right down there, but hopefully with this new district, there'll be demand for a lot of coffee down there. So, but it's an existing building, so they just want to be able to have a little stand. They do have a plan in here. Looks like they might be able to come in and sit down, get a small area of coffee. Like I say, it is on Dutton Street. I know we approved the Dunkin' Donuts down there, but this will be more of a little different area where you can actually come in, sit down. This new Hamilton district gets approved, I'm sure that there'll be a need for something like this down there maybe, so.
Trying to determine whether you had any parking down here.
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Yeah, got an existing working area. Oh, no? What, 200 feet? Yeah, with the street parking, or people, he thinks they'll get people in the walking area once they get this canal district, the Hamilton Canal District up, I don't know. He's in the light industrial, so then he meets the code requirements, he has no problem with.
Yeah, there's some businesses around there now.
Yeah. Yeah, what's it?
Two spaces.
Required numbers.
It's indicated on the application, if I'm reading it correctly, that's takeout and not for anything
Yeah,
dined
I
in.
think, he just says, the window, yeah, looks like the takeout.
I'd make a motion for approval if it's gonna be strictly takeout.
Motion made to approve. All in favor on the motion for
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody against? Hearing none, that passes 5-0 in favor for a recommendation to the ZBA. The next matter is the matter that already appeared before us this evening. This was a coalition for the Better Acre, which was 760 Merrimack Street, 20 Decatur Street, and 17 Salem Street. And they need, Attorney Flood indicated they have to go in because they need a variance for the parking in a land use dwelling. We did approve the site plan.
Mr. Chairman, I move we recommend approval based on the discussion we had earlier this evening.
Okay, motion made. Anyone want to second that motion?
Second that, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, motion made and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes yes. All in favor? Okay, so that matter carries 5-0 in favor. Next matter is for variance on Brazel Development Corporation. This is on 106 Marginal Street. This is the institutional mixed zone to construct student housing for UMass Lowell exceeding the maximum allowed front yard setback required according to Article 5, Section 5.1 of the zoning ordinance. This is the plan that we've already approved when the matter came in with the, with the little, for the UMass Lowell dorm, with the site going over the railroad tracks that we approved in the site plan before. So now they're going before them because of the fact that they don't have the front yard setback.
It appears that they received that variance at one point, but are not going to be building it within the 1 year required, so they're asking for an extension for 6 months.
So do you think, did they get that when they first wanted to come in for the condominiums? Is that what it was? And then they came in and changed the usage? Because when we just approved for the, to put the dorms at UMass, that probably wouldn't have expired that long ago. I remember a few years back, we allowed the condo.
This is June of '07 that they get approval.
Yeah, that was probably when they came in for the condos, remember?
Yeah.
And then when they came back in with the latest plan, they came in for the dormitories for you all.
Right.
So maybe they had the approval on that old plan that we approved, and now they're gonna need it for the new one?
Well, it says they granted the variance for parking requirements as they pertain to the proposed dormitory.
Oh, okay.
So I think it was for the dormitory at the time. It
Oh,
just
okay,
looks
so-
like they won't get it done within the year, and
Oh, I
they're
got
asking
you.
for an additional
Okay.
6 months is allowed by law if they get the approval of the ZBA.
Okay.
So I'd recommend approval on that.
Second.
Motion made and second, all in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, so, that motion carries. The next matter is for BPV Lowell LLC, and this is a repetitive petition, which will be coming back before us in the future anyways to vote on for public hearing. This is 122 Weston Ave, also known as 150, 200, 250 Weston Ave, and this is the overlay district, to request the finance substantial material change to propose previously denied on, that was denied by the ZBA on January 28th, 2008. This matter has to come back for us with a public hearing anyway, so usually we kind of reserve comment on these until they come back for the public hearing. So, therefore, I know they have to refer it back to us, and it goes back before them, so I don't know if anyone wants to vote on this now, or just reserve comment until it comes back before us on a public hearing.
Makes sense.
That's
Okay.
fine.
I'll make, act that we reserve comment on this till it comes back on the public hearing. So therefore, that completes the zoning board of appeals matters. I know, on the general correspondences as well, I know that we received just recently, a draft of 2 of the minutes. I didn't take them at the beginning of the meeting because we had a lot of people here this evening. I know we had one on February 4th, which is a draft, and one on March 3rd with a draft. I don't know if the board members had a chance to look those over. The only question I had that I mentioned to Aaron is on the February 4th ones, it says, minutes of roll call and neighborhood groups, and it says motion, but it didn't give the date for the one above, where the one before said approval of the January 7th. I think that was December meeting, wasn't it?
For the minutes that were approved?
Yeah, on the draft plans that he gave us for February 4th.
Oh, yes.
See, on the second one, we approved the January 7th, and the one above it, it says motion for, and it didn't put the date in.
Oh, yeah, that could be the December, yeah.
It had to be the December meeting, and I know we only had one meeting in December. I think it was like, oh, I forget.
I think that's what it's supposed to be, I'll take another look.
Yeah,
just
so
make
if
sure.
you want to just put in the December meeting, you can put the date in.
Yep.
Because we only have one in December due to the holiday schedule. I think it was like, I want to say like,
The 17th, maybe?
yeah, I think that sounds about right.
I think it was 17th.
Yeah. So I don't know if the board members had a chance to look over the February 7th meetings, minutes, if we want to vote on those this evening. I'll wait till the next. That was basically the only public hearing was this 868 Middlesex Street, where we had to continue it, and the fact that we approved 2 sets of minutes.
I'm fine making a motion to approve.
Okay, motion made to approve the February 4th. Second. Motion made second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, chair votes yes. The March 3rd minutes. Anybody have any corrections or any questions on that? That one, we had the Middlesex Street again, which got continued again. And then we had the Clark Road project. And then we had another one, then we had 1782 Middlesex Street, which started on March 3rd and we completed this evening. So, if nobody has any corrections on those, entertain a motion to approve those?
So moved.
Okay. Motion made in second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I think basically, therefore, any other comments from any other board members?
Just a discussion on our Monday, June 2nd meeting, Mr. Chairman. I won't be available that evening. The Draco Town meeting is also that evening. I have to attend that on behalf of clients, so I'll be absent on that day. I also know it's the annual meeting for the Bar Association. I don't know if you're planning to attend that evening or not.
Okay, yeah, I know a lot of times we had conflict with the Lowell Bar Association meetings, so I didn't really give them much consideration. Any other board members have any conflict with the June 2nd meeting? I know, do we have much scheduled already for that on Aaron?
I did get applications this last Friday for a definitive subdivision. It's a Rita Street extension off of Westview Road.
Okay.
It's five lot subdivision on, it's city-owned properties that will include a open space easement, retaining open space.
What's the address on that one for the 5-lot subdivision?
I think it's 105 Westview Road. But it's the extension of Rita Street.
Okay.
And then also we have a application that came in Friday for special permit for driveway length at Westview Road, at the very end of Westview Road.
Okay.
That's the only thing right now that we have scheduled.
Have those been advertised as of yet, yeah?
They won't be advertised until there's 2 weeks to get advertised.
So one is site plan, the other special permit?
Well, one's a subdivision and one's a
subdivision.
special permit.
So the special permit, we need
4 to 5.
Yeah, 4 votes, okay. And the subdivision would need at least a majority, right?
Yep.
Okay.
That's correct.
So what's the wish of the board? Do you want to leave it off to June 2nd, knowing that we'll be down one board member, and then if the applicant either wants to go forward on the special permit with the 4 board members, or usually with the conflict with the room, the only time we can schedule will be the following Thursday, right?
That's right, yeah.
Which would be what, second, third, fourth, fifth?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just for your information, I know that the applicant for the subdivision is going to want to come in for kind of a preliminary, it's more of a pre-application session for the subdivision, the next meeting, November 9th. So, Joe, you'll get a chance to look at it and comment, at the very least.
That's fine. So would the board members, what would the request be? I mean, they're saying we have a special permit scheduled for June 2nd. Mr. Claremont can't be available that night, so usually what happens, they can either come in, we can tell them they can either have the hearing before the 4 of us, and they need all 4 votes, or they can continue to a date where they have the request of all 5 board members, or if we want, we could change it from that Monday to that Thursday, and if all members can make it there, so I'm agreeable to either or, whichever the other request the board members have.
Mr. Chairman, just so I understand, that's, the subdivision was a pre-application hearing, not a public hearing? Is that
No, pre-application is coming in next
Before that.
meeting,
But-
but the final hearing
I
will
got
be
you,
on
okay.
June
Yeah,
2nd.
and then he said, we have another matter coming in for special permit for driveway lane on Westview Road, he said, which is over 200 feet. We've had a couple of those in the
Okay.
past. So that special permit would need the 4 votes.
Yeah.
So Joe's just giving us ahead of time notice that he can't be here on the 2nd, so whether we want to try to put on for that Thursday, so we have all board members here, instead of having that one come in, and then if we have to continue to the 16th, and then after that, we go into the summer schedule, which is just 1 meeting in July and 1 in August, so. So whatever the board members are, I can be available that Monday or that Thursday, doesn't matter to me either way. Doesn't make a difference to you gentlemen?
Same
either
here.
way? Okay. Do you want to put on for the 5th then, Joe, that we can have you here? Okay, that way, I'm just thinking with the special permit, with the 4 votes, sometimes it gets tricky.
Correct, yes, and from my experience, most applicants
Would want to
prefer
continue,
defer
yeah.
until-
I mean, the only question I have, as long as the advertisement hasn't gone out of them yet, can you correct that on time and notify the
No,
applicants?
there's plenty of time, yeah.
Yeah.
The applications were on Friday, so.
Okay, so basically you can let them know, say, especially with the special permit, and the other one is say, we're gonna be down a board member, we don't wanna give them, the benefit of the doubt, they having the full board since they need the 4 of the 5 votes. And usually, if it's 3 days, it usually doesn't affect people's pocket that much, especially if they're looking for 4 out of 5 votes, they might be more willing to come in a couple of days later. So, we wanna, administratively, we'll change the meeting from the June 2nd to the June 5th on a Thursday?
Makes sense.
Is that acceptable to all parties, okay? All right. Having said that, does anybody else have any further comments, any questions, any other board members? Hearing none, we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, with second motion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we are adjourned. Thank you very much, everybody, and have a good night.
Good night.